Hey guys, welcome to No One Will Be Seated. I'm Jason.
And I'm Fred.
And welcome to our first introductory episodes. Normally, we would be taking a look at a different genre film and film history year by year, but for our first set of episodes, we're actually going to look at another giant, sprawling, epic saga in cinematic history, and that is the Star Wars saga.
Yeah. We figured, well, we got the presumable end to trilogy films coming up soon. And we might as well, watch all of them to gear up for it.
Yeah, I wanted to do this for a really long time. Take a look at them, at all of them, and I've struggled a little bit with how to present them. Like, do you play them like as we saw them? So, like original trilogy, then prequel trilogy, then um, sequel trilogy, or not? And I decided just to do the timeline. So we'll be going through the prequel trilogy, be going through Solo, then Rogue One, original trilogy, and then the sequel trilogy afterwards. Well, not quite trilogy yet, but um, I wanted to like do it now. I felt like it was kind of our last chance because the Rise of Skywalker is coming up at the end of December, and that's technically the end of the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
And while like Solo and Rogue One are technically anthology stories, I still kind of felt like it fit into the overall timeline. Rogue One, especially since it's basically 5 minutes before Episode 4.
Yeah.
So how it'll work? Typically, we would be going through 2 films a month. We would do one episode 1 week. That's a full length commentary. The next week we would do a discussion, like an hour long discussion on it, kind of wrapping everything up and getting our final thoughts down. This time we're just going to go straight through. We're going to do full length commentaries for all 10 films, starting with episode 1, ending with episode 8, which should, if everything goes right, should occur right about the week that Rise of Skywalker comes out. So for the first 10 episodes, we're just doing straight commentaries.
Yeah, just because it's like, let's face it, for the most part, they're the movies that everybody knows and loves. You don't really need a review of it. You don't really need further discussion like that because, let's face it, you'll just go watch some nerd talk about like a lore video or something on YouTube.
Is
There's
that a thing?
Oh, yeah, have you not looked into, like, Star Wars Explained or anything like that?
I have actually seen that. I have to admit that I probably have seen those more than I probably
I
should
was about
have.
to say, yeah, because you, like, follow in with all the Collider shit, and I know that, at least one of them's a big Star Wars nerd, because I know Blanchard, collaborated with them every so often.
Yeah, several of them. I am a frequent watcher of Collider Jedi Council. For actually, I started watching Collider Jedi Council just before Episode 7 came out. Star Wars Explained, um, New Rock Stars, all that kind of stuff. I go and watch. Ken Knapsack's Force Center podcast I listen to quite a bit. So yeah, to say that Star Wars is a big part of my life since I was a young lad is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most of us, like, ever since it came out, it has been, right? I don't know, like, it just kinda we latched onto it in a weird way, like, just as a culture, um, and I don't necessarily know if it's a thing that will, ever happen again, or at least not anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good point. I don't know if anything will necessarily affect culture like that. I'm not even exactly sure what the last thing I could say has Harry Potter. Maybe.
I mean, I guess, but I mean, maybe, yeah, I guess so, but even then, that feels so much more like like, millennial thing than, like, a thing that's passed down then to, like, Gen Z and so on.
Sure. Yeah, I suppose so. I don't like Lord of the Rings. Maybe.
Oh, definitely not Lord of the Rings, like, not as
No.
a thing that passes intergenerationally like that.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, with us, with Star Wars, like, I mean, I remember watching it with you as a kid, like, well, we were gonna talk about, since we're doing Phantom Menace, like, that's one that you and I saw in theaters together, um,
Yeah, it was your first movie.
yeah. Yeah, first movie that I saw in theaters. Yeah. I remember it not as vividly, but, pretty well.
I mean, you were tiny.
Yeah. I remember for some reason we exited out the like what would usually be the fire escape doors. That one
I
I
used to go out theaters like that. I used to go out the exit doors.
yeah, because I remember exiting straight outside and thinking it was really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done that, well, probably since then, but I used to like it because it was just a shortcut to get to the parking lot, you know?
Yeah, and they weren't like all wired up to an alarm sensor like they are now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A little different back then. Yeah, so how this is gonna work is we've got our own copies of the film up right now. We've pretty much got ourselves synced up together. So we really haven't found a great way to, you know,
Just do like a
uh,
watch along or something with each other.
yeah, to do that without a significant lag between each other. So we're basically trying to sync our copies up together, which is what you would do as well. Is you would go ahead and load up your copy, whether you have it digitally or on Blu-ray, and then we're gonna do a countdown. Fred will do a countdown, and then we'll go, and then you can play your copy while you're listening along, or if it's a film that you know really well and you don't have to worry about it, or you just want to hear us talk about it, you don't have to worry about having the visual stimuli. You can just hear us in your ear holes all you want.
Yes, let us invade those lovely ear channels.
Ear holes kind of makes me feel weird.
Does
Feels
it?
invasive. Yeah.
What about the those oh what is the word for ears? Is it like oral?
Oral.
I don't
Arl.
because I don't
Yeah.
think it's oral because oral is
It's not
mouth,
oral. Well, I always say
but
the
it's
AU.
got
I
the
always do.
AU, so that's like
Yeah.
also
It's
oral.
like it's aural, I think,
Let's
isn't
I
it?
think it is oral. So let's just allow us to invade your oral reservoirs.
That sounds even worse.
Exactly. Like it's
That
no
sounds
good.
even worse.
It's all bad. It's all awful.
Yeah, so this is kind of what it's going to be like each week with us. For the commentary stuff, I'd really like to do a few minutes of something cool between the two of us and then get going. And we're kind of at that point now. So this is going to be sitting at about 2 hours and 16 minutes. So consequently, right about the length of our old podcasts.
Yeah. But hopefully like we'll actually be able to contain it within that 216
Boy, I hope
ish.
so. I think I'm good to go. How are you?
I'm good.
All right, so are you ready to start?
Yeah, we're looking at starting probably about 22 seconds in.
Yeah, roughly about that. It's right about the time that the blue "A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away" title card is up. And Fred will count up a few seconds, and then I'll make a note of when the Star Wars actual logo kicks in, and John Williams' infamous music like hits us like a beautiful array of unicorn poo.
Is unicorn poo actually all that lovely or
I imagine that it is.
I think you and I have got very different takes towards poo.
I mean, it's unicorns though.
Right, but I don't think that really changes things. They're
Sparkly,
still
fluffy, colorful. Let's just get going.
let's get going.
All right, yeah, go ahead and count us down, and I'll start. I guess it's going to be 1, 2, 3 start, or one,
Yeah,
two,
I will go
three.
3, 2, 1, start, and on start you should be hitting the play button.
Okay, not on three on start.
Yes, on start. All right, ready?
I'm really gonna do this every time.
1, 2, 3, start. Yeah, no, you were right, but my brain died temporarily.
We are
26,
going though,
27,
right?
28. And there's the
There
logo.
it is. Yep.
Oh
So we've
man.
got the Star Wars logo fading, and the infamous crawl should be popping up for you guys on your screen right about now.
Yeah.
Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I have to tell you something straight up.
Yes.
I guess we should actually like get this out of the way first. I am not a prequel hater, but I am not a prequel apologist either.
Yeah. Not
So I don't want to like, I don't want to rag on these so much, but I'm also gonna be like honest with my opinions and things I liked or didn't like, etc. So I hope it doesn't come across as like me shitting on them a whole bunch, but I mean, they're there, so we're gonna go through them.
Well, and there's the whole thing with like potential like what you consider to be right for Star Wars is potentially different from what other people may, and that's fine for the most part.
Yeah, I think what I've been most excited about with this, as we talked about a little bit before, is I grew up with the original era, and then I came back to this where you grew up in this era. So I'm curious as to like how our views of what's great and what isn't is different, because of that. Because there's a whole new generation of people that have grown up with these films, not started out with Luke and Han and all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think I remember as a kid watching like the special edition VHSs a lot more
We did,
than like the trilogy though.
yeah.
So I'm not sure if I even tie as close to it. Yeah, because I think I would have been in like early middle school or something, or maybe like late elementary when episode 3 came out.
You were episode 3, yeah. Because when we saw this in episode 1, it was you were tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been, well, because it came out what, like 99 or 2000, right?
Y- yeah, roughly. I think we should have that up, but I just like one of my favorite stories is the fact that it was your first movie and I sat you down in your seat and I had to move my leg over to hold your seat down
Yeah, that wouldn't stop for a
because you were
while.
so small it would actually literally fold up
Yeah,
fold you up into the chair. So I had to like sit with my leg like over the corner so you didn't flip up.
yeah, that wouldn't change for a while. It would take years before I could sit on a movie seat and not have it try
It's
and flip up in me.
it's probably about the same now.
No, no, now I'm just heavy enough to keep him weighed down. Oh man.
So yeah, so here comes the first kind of what is almost considered the atrocity of Star Wars is the Trade Federation
Yeah, well, it's
and
really
the horrible accent.
yeah, the accents are a problem, and it seems like just out of nowhere, like episode 1 just like went real heavy
Yeah,
into
yeah.
accent
Between
territory.
the are the Nemoidians? I right? I think
Yeah,
right.
yeah, something like that.
Um, them and the Gungans both. It's kind of like, oh, George, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah, it's
And
like,
I honestly
oh,
think
make
it
it some
was one of
peace.
those things where I didn't. I never felt Star Wars were necessarily kids films.
Right.
George says he always like thought of it that way.
I really don't think so. I think it was just once like merchandising really took off that it was like, oh fuck, I need to market this towards kids.
Yeah, I think he always had kind of and had always kind of intended that to be more kid friendly. And when we get to Empire, there's a couple of points where he talked about talking to like child psychologists to make sure that it would be okay.
Hmm.
So I think he always had that in mind, but especially between then and now, he like started hitting the this is a kid's story hard. So I think he was just trying to come up with like cartoon sounding voices and languages that would make kids laugh.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like in like almost like animated languages or animated voices.
yeah, I can definitely see that, and as well, it's like to be fair, adding on like accents and voices like that is an easy way to give your aliens a sense of culture and personality. But it's just
Yep.
like, oof, man, they lent so heavy into it that it's like this is hitting a rough spot.
Yeah, it ends up being real yikes.
Yeah,
And I don't think that was intentional by any means, but it is one of those things where it's like, oh,
yeah,
yikes. And as an adult and not a kid, the battle droids were just something I
yeah.
couldn't get past.
Yeah, they're really hard to get past because they play so much to that like child audience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess the theory is like they're mass produced, so they're like not the smartest
Yeah,
robots on the line. I don't, tools in the shed, whatever you want to say, but um, it was a little tough to get used to.
yeah. Well, and especially coming from like the almost nonverbal stormtroopers and everything.
Yeah, for sure. Although I have to tell you, like, it's a dichotomy because at the same time that like the droids are not my favorite bit, these particular droids, um, Trade Federation droids, I mean, by the same token, this whole sequence, like, is like my favorite bits in the sense that like we're watching Jedi's kick ass.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
that's
and
fair.
Lucas says himself, I don't remember if it was in the episode 1 commentary or a behind the scenes thing, but you know, he basically said like we haven't seen Jedi's. Like we've seen old Jedi's, like elderly Jedi's, Jedi's that are half machine and like half trained Jedi's. Like we've never seen them in their prime before.
Yeah,
And, you know, I know some people think like the twirly sabers and the acrobatics is unnecessary, but for me, I'm just like, yeah, like,
man, that Jedi speed
yes.
thing looks so goofy though. Still,
Here's the problem with the Jedi speed thing. How come they never use it again?
yeah, there's a lot of like those force powers that's just not used ever.
Kind of inconsistent force powers.
Yeah.
But yeah, the speed thing kind of got to me, and then they just never use it again.
Um,
Here's some Lucas humor coming up.
so
Yoinks!
I think it's Red Letter Media who brought up the original like criticism to me that I never really thought of. But it's really strange to put in a fairly convoluted plot about politics and trade into then what's being played off as a children's movie.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you know, I think, you know, I mean it plays to Lucas perfectly though, because Lucas is very distrustful of politicians and politics and governments.
right.
And, you know, so that really this particular stuff really plays into it, but it does get really heavy-handed.
Yeah.
In some ways, in some ways, I feel like it grinds it a little bit, but then like you get the opposite with like the new trilogy, where I wish there was more of it.
Yeah, because there's a
You
lot
know
of
what I
stuff that
mean?
like I remember us on our drive back from watching Seven, where it was like, oh yeah, here's all this extra background politics stuff that just wasn't talked about.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff that you get from the novels and the comics and stuff. You know, the new canon.
Yeah.
As far as what was happening behind the scenes, and there were a few shots. We'll get to them when we watch Seven, but there was a few shots that it's like, you know, this particular couple of shots has a ton of meaning in all of this because, you know, it was significant. And like there was, you know, the was she an admiral in Last Jedi that like had significance, like big significance to Leia
Yeah.
that was never touched in any of the things you had to, you know, and it's that danger now where you have really great novels and, you know, this extra canon, but you don't necessarily have to, you don't want to have to read that stuff or to get the real story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of like as an average moviegoer who maybe doesn't have the time to spend like 40 hours onto a wiki, it's
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, well, there's just a whole lot that's lost as a result of this.
Yeah, it's one of the things now that happens is that's like a double-edged sword again, is that the new canon is I think there's a lot of really great stuff in it,
Hmm.
but it's split up between so many books and comics and shows. I mean, I think Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars, especially, they have a ton of significance in the overall canon that's not really touched on in, you know, in the movies at all.
So here's the thing. I wonder how much of Naboo is actually developed.
You mean the planet itself?
Yeah.
You know, it's a good question, and I know that there's like there's probably a visual dictionary or something that talks about it that, you know, I haven't read. There's also a book that came out. Um,
Oh,
oh, it was last year, or the year before, that was like the places or the locations of Star Wars,
yeah, something like that.
something like that, that went over like all of the like planets and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, so here we get Jar Jar. As a kid, I loved him dearly, and then as I've grown up, it's like, oh, he's way more just kind of oof.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly how it was supposed to be. Not necessarily that you would grow up and say oof, but that you were a kid and you were like, I remember when we saw this, you love Jar Jar.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a big old walking dinosaur looking thing. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, except for the uh what is it? Caribbean
Yeah.
black accent.
Oh man, I wonder how many of our listeners also listen to Knowledge Fight.
Shout out to you wonks if you do. I am desperately, in fact, I was jotting down some notes earlier. I'm desperately going to try to do a special episode that we can include Dan in.
Yeah, I feel like we're a ways away from that
Um,
just because, like, I feel like we need an actual audience to offer.
we do, except I would totally leech off of Knowledge Fight's audience.
Yeah, but
But it's
then,
also one of those things where I want to do Room 237, but I want to really give it the time and research
yeah,
that it would deserve having Dan on, and that includes reading a bunch of Kubrick stuff and everything else, and it definitely wants some work, but we'll cross over eventually.
yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of crossovers that would be lovely, but we'll see when they can happen.
Um, so Jar Jar, I like the look of Jar Jar.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it is like a neat character design, right? It's like this walking dinosaurish thing. He's got those. I really love the Gungan ears. Honestly, like I
yeah,
find him really cute. But yeah, there's like their whole mannerisms. That's kind of like, but why?
yeah. That there's a lot of things like that that fits for. I really like the like breathing tubes that the Jedi have.
Yeah, those rebreathers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty great. And it's like proof that the Jedi are really resilient. This is the type of stuff that I never thought of like when this came out, but that's pretty deep.
Yeah,
Like your guys' bodies are doing great
yeah,
with that pressure. But the Gungan cities are really cool looking, I think.
yeah. I really like the idea of
Just
those.
these
Those
giant bubble like things.
yeah, the giant like underground or underwater bubble cities is like a really cool idea, and like I like how this whole transition here happens. It seems like it would
Where
be
they step into
really
the
yeah, it seems like it would be really kind of a cool feeling.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the Abyss.
Yes, yeah.
Did you ever watch the Abyss?
I believe so. It's one of those things I'm finding myself having like a really hard time recalling movies that I've watched, right?
Yeah.
Frankie and I were trying to go over like what my favorite movie is, and I really couldn't think of one. And then I would come up with a list of like 30 movies. I'm like, oh, well, that one's really good. Oh, well, that one's really good. But none of them were ones that I'm like, oh, there we go. That's my definitive favorite movie. Even though I'm certain
And
I've got one.
here we get proof that it's not just Jar Jar who speaks like that.
Yeah.
You sign big doo doo. And the whole like how wooed. I think that's gonna be our
I
catchphrase.
also really like their weird mounts that they've got.
Yeah, I do too. But here's the thing too is I mean, I guess they're very similar, but like Boss Nass looks I mean, is he the boss because he looks nothing like any of the other Gungans?
Uh, maybe.
Voiced by Brian Blessed,
Yeah, which
who's
man,
amazing.
those are
He's
some
like the best in Flash Gordon.
old Yogscast vibes.
Was he on your Oxcast?
No, but there's an old
Oh.
Yogscast bit where Simon impersonates Blind Blessed. It was actually the first place or first time that I'd ever heard his name.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to see if I can't dig it up and throw it your way. But man, I so I mean, here's the thing: is I know that they were really excited to work with all this new technology
Yes.
and everything, um, and I'm sure that they thought that it looked great for the time. But
Yeah.
shit,
And it
does
really
it
doesn't look bad now, to be honest with you.
really? Because to me, it does not stand up. They all look like Play-Doh monsters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they look bad. They don't look great by any means. I mean, especially when you look at some of the work in like Solo or especially Rogue One.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing you start realizing too is like how fast and loose Jedi are with their powers.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, just give us we'll wave your hand and blah blah blah. But then like later on, he's like, we can't use our powers to help you, and it's like, why can't you?
Yeah.
Like you use them everywhere
You
else.
use them all the
Like,
time to benefit yourself.
right, exactly.
So here's the other thing. Like, I never really thought about it, but what are the moral implications of Jedi using like the Jedi mind trick?
That's a great question. In fact, I was kind of actually just thinking about that the same time you said it.
Because it's this sort of thing, right? Where like, from my understanding, because
There's
I
definitely no sense of consent,
no, because
right?
that's what I was about to say. Is from my understanding, from like Jessica Jones, one of the big problems with, or one of the big things with Kilgrave is it's just like, okay, well, look, but you don't have any consent in this. It just erases all of that
Right,
through these
exactly.
mind control abilities. And it seems like Jedi just kind of throw that around whenever.
It's true. Yeah, I never really thought about it.
Like for what are ostensibly the good guys, like the ability to just make you change your mind is kind of grim because it puts them as this these great like moral regulators of the galaxy.
To be honest, it's a little terrifying when you think about it.
Well, yeah, I mean it's one of those things where again you could recut this whole trilogy and turn like the Jedi into an extremely just dark like horror force.
But that is, and I'm sure it was intended maybe, and it's just not something I thought of until I got older, maybe a little more complex in my thinking, but it kind of is the story of the Jedi at this point, right?
Well, we
And it's territory that I've really hoped or been hoping that the new trilogy and canon would get into is the fact that like the Jedi, when A New Hope came out,
mm.
it was like very much, Saturday cereal. It was good guy versus black guy, or good guy versus good guy versus bad guy, white hat versus black hat.
Yeah,
Is why I got that screwed up. To call back to the westerns. It was very black and white. It was like this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. We got to stomp out evil. But then as time goes on, you start looking at it and you're like, you guys aren't quite, the pearly white good guys that that was originally supposed to be, I guess.
right.
And they do touch that in a little bit that like, their moral center as far as the Jedi go is kind of shifted or blurred a little bit with some of them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It kind of gave rise to like the current understanding of the gray Jedi, that aren't full on dark, aren't full on light, kind of brush both sides and try to reach a balance between the two,
Yeah.
like Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, or, like, to some extent, Mace Windu, who, according to the Star Wars wiki, whole, like, fighting, style is, like, based off of, like, anger and aggression and using that to, channel into fights and whatnot,
Yeah,
which is, like, it's supposed to be an extremely difficult fighting form to take and stuff.
yeah. I mean, I guess we'll get to that in a couple of
Once you
movies, but
dig deep into Star Wars wiki, like, the further in you go, right, like, page 1 is just like, "Okay, whatever." By page 2, you're like, okay, we're too deep. We're in too deep. It's dumb nerd shit now, and I don't care."
well, and sometimes the thing I have issue with in wikis in particular, and Wikipedia is not any different. Is that like anybody can edit those per se,
Yeah,
and sometimes things can get a little weird. Hello, there's always a bigger fish.
which fair enough, but I want it doesn't seem like there's enough aquatic life to sustain all of those creatures.
I don't know. There seems to be a lot.
I mean, there seems to
There's
be
a lot
like
of
a
fish,
good
but I mean,
amount,
a
but
whale. You think about how much a whale eats. Like those things are probably what 5, 10 times the size of.
yeah. Well, that and it's like there's certainly some schools of fish, but like I mean on Earth we see maybe double the size of some of those, and,
Yeah.
we don't get any creatures nearly that big.
Look at the little. I never noticed these before, but you see the little light bubbles at the bottom of her dress.
Oh, no, I'd missed that.
There's like these. There's these like round, almost balloon-looking lights on the bottom of her dress.
Hmm. It didn't look like that ship was sitting on the ground.
No, no, and the thing is it's as complex as it tries to be. Some of it's like really like simple. Like, well, we walked in. Oh, we took the queen.
Yeah.
You know, excellent. It's like our security volunteers have no way to fight back, and it's like they walk in. They're like, we captured the queen, so the war's over in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So, the the queen right now, you know who she is?
Yeah.
Who is she?
Well, currently she's supposed to be played by oh fuck, the name's not escaping me. Holy shit, what is wrong with my brain? Just go ahead and say, because I'm gonna like fucking kill myself trying to pull this out. I already feel like steam trying to erupt out of there from the hardworking gears.
I was actually just looking it up because it's
Keira
Kira.
Knightley.
There it is.
Yeah.
The problem was I froze because I'm like, I kept wanting to say Kira Sedgwick, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not it, and I froze. So
No, it's
that
just
happens
it's one of
sometimes.
those things where it's like I absolutely knew who the fuck it was, right? And I couldn't pull up the fucking name. I'm like, okay, I can
Yeah,
name like another role at least that they've been in, and I can't find the damn name.
yeah. And the problem is to this day I still don't see her.
Yeah.
Like when you see her like in the
Well,
makeup and
they were
stuff, I'm like,
supposed to
I
be
don't.
like extremely similar looking at that age.
Yeah, and I totally failed, and I was gonna read this section of how Star Wars conquered the universe on this because I believe um there were rumors or something that like they didn't get along at all,
Uh-huh.
and like Natalie Portman was really mean to her, made her cry.
Which honestly, given some of the stuff I have heard about Natalie Portman, I could definitely believe.
It wouldn't surprise. I just don't want to say that that's it without being able to cite the book, but it's stuff that I've heard before.
I mean,
And
isn't
even like
Portman
right
like
here, I'm like,
friendly with
I don't
Kissinger?
see Keira Knightley here. What's that?
Isn't Portman friendly with Kissinger?
Probably.
I think she is.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Which is like that's already I think like a pretty big character detriment.
Yeah. This speaking of looking at this cast, this movie ruined Liam Neeson for a while.
Oh really?
Yeah, Liam Neeson actually technically retired from acting after this movie.
Oh okay. Because I was looking at his wiki the other week. Because I remember growing up, I was always told like, oh, he got into acting extremely late, and this was his like big breakout role. And it's like,
Oh my god,
and it's
no.
like, no, man, he had a long career before
Oh
this.
yeah. Like one of the first things I think I saw him in was Kroll
Yeah,
in like the early 80s, but yeah, I remember when this came out, he'd basically said he was done with acting, and I want to say that he had made a statement something like this is a producer's world, not an actor's world, or not a director's world anymore, or something like that.
do you think a part of that also had to do with just those general like changes in acting, right? Like from my understanding, like given that a lot of this was shot on like green screen sets and whatnot,
Oh yeah, for sure.
acted against like green screen objects. Like I know that was a big issue throughout most of like episode 2. And it was also a pretty
Well, it
big
was
issue.
episode 1 too, because a lot of this is all green, like all these backgrounds are green
Yeah, I'm
screen.
saying I know that was a big issue. I think that McGregor had talked about in 2 was having to act against basically a tennis ball. Um
Yeah, well, and that is a major issue with even this film in particular was um a lot of people weren't fond of Portman's acting in the trilogy, and even Liam Neeson's performance is okay, right? Not certainly stellar,
yeah.
but a lot of them were really frustrated with the fact that everything was green screen, and Lucas was not really helpful in that.
No.
Lucas was very, very detail oriented as far as the effects go.
Yes.
He was very concerned about where the camera was and where the effects would be, and less able to portray or not portray, but direct in how people should be acting and portraying what's happening. He was very much like this is. He was looking at all the green and saying, "Oh God, this is what it's all going to look like," and not as much on the performances. I think so. There was a little bit of frustration in not connecting actors and the director as far as what should be going on.
Yeah, did you ever see the, oh, there was a bit I think it was supposed to be, like, a behind the scenes thing or something, but I've always just seen it as a YouTube clip of, after they did one of the first, like, screenings at, Skywalker Ranch, and it's, like,
Mm,
George and a couple of the producers, like, outside the room in what looks like a kitchen or something,
yeah.
basically going like, "Okay, well, it's not terrible, but I think we made some mistakes."
Oh, I haven't
I'll have
seen
to see
that.
if I can dig it up. It's a really, kind of a fun clip in a, like, major, like, schadenfreude way. Like, it's I don't know.
I do remember, and I think it's talked about in the book that like Francis Ford Coppola and his other friends were trying to get him not to have Anakin be a kid.
Yeah, just 'cause it becomes
They
a whole,
wanted.
like, issue.
Well, yeah, it was. They were like, it's a little weird having a little kid and like a teenage Padme, and it's a little too like cutesy. They felt like Anakin should be more closer to a teenager, which I would have liked to have seen because a lot of they put so much focus on oh, you're too old to begin your training, and it's like, well, here is a consequence of that.
Yeah,
Starting when they're already close to a teenager and their minds are formed per se, and
which I think just goes on to serve as a further detriment to, like, the Jedi way of teaching where it's like, "Okay, well, no, but we gotta indoctrinate you when you're young."
yeah, exactly. Um, what? Where's his number at? Where's his number at? Do you see a number there?
Nah.
He like looked at a piece of him and he's like R2D2. It's like there's no numbers there. What are you doing?
I mean, maybe there's some, like, thing about the way that they're patterned or something, I don't know. I'm sure if I
Yeah,
looked on
you
the
have to like imagine that this was a great point for Kiara too. Kiara,
Kira. Yeah,
Kira,
Kira.
Kira. What am I doing? Where she's like, hey, go clean this droid up.
Yeah.
We did miss the appearance of one of the greatest characters in all of Star Wars, in Darth Maul.
Yeah. Yeah, here's the thing is, like, Darth Maul was one of those characters that as soon as I saw him on screen, I'm like, "Oh, I am all about this dude."
Yeah,
And it sucks that he, didn't really last.
he didn't, but I'm so glad in how they've used him in canon
Yeah.
and through the Clone Wars and through Rebels and his cameo in Solo. Um, I like how he's stuck around, and I like the mythos around him, or the story around him, and the greater story that continues outside of the movies.
Yeah.
Another thing is too is it kind of bums me out a little bit, um, that things were shown or played the way they were, because I would have liked to have been surprised at seeing Sheev Palpatine.
Right.
Because we had already seen the original trilogy, when he pops up with the hood over his head, it's like, oh, there's the Emperor.
Yeah.
There's Palpatine. There's no real mystery behind it. Where if it would have played chronologically, it's like we wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Likewise, I think that's a little bit with the whole like Anakin slash Vader thing. Is it's like I guess there's some merit in saying, oh, I want to see how he got to this point. By the same token, it's like you already know he's going to become the Dark Lord of the Sith.
Well, and it's like as it is, the idea of just covering just the Clone Wars as a trilogy is way more interesting than doing it with Episode 1 as is, right?
Yeah, I was hearing somebody, and it might have been somebody from Collider, on an episode of Jedi Council. Somebody had said they thought like Anakin's turning should have happened in like the second movie,
Yeah. No, no, it absolutely
and
should
then the
have.
hunt, um, the hunting of the Jedi or whatever, or the purge. I guess they call it the Jedi purge now. should have happened in like the third movie.
Yeah, and it should have played out like a horror movie instead of anything else. Like, think about how like
Yeah,
cool that would be. Where it's like there's just this like if I don't know if
I've
his
I've
turn
never
would
noticed
be.
that protocol droid
Oh
before.
yeah, I don't know if his turn
Next
would
to
be
Jar
like
Jar. I've seen this movie probably literally over 200 times, and I've never noticed that before.
I don't know if his turn would necessarily be like known throughout the Jedi, but like imagine how interesting it would be that there's just some dark force that is traveling through the galaxy, snuffing out your compatriots, and you don't know when it's coming for you, but you know that it will. That's
Yeah. Oh
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah
I love that idea, and I do think like he didn't necessarily have to become mechanical Vader, but he should have made the turn in two,
yeah
and then three he's Vader, and it's him hunting the Jedi down, and it's him and Kenobi,
yeah
cat and mouse, or Kenobi's trying to help the Jedi, he's hunting the Jedi, and at the end it's the big clash. I would have loved to have seen that,
yeah
but that would have, at that point, it would have been one of those things too where maybe you don't have a Qui-Gon, you have uh Kenobi having Anakin as a Padawan
yeah
already.
yeah. That's what I was kind of thinking was for like what would be the this trilogy's like episode one would be Anakin as a Padawan and Obi-Wan like training him, and maybe during one of those training missions, they can stumble upon plots or some shit.
Here it comes. Are you ready? Oh, maybe it's I guess it's not yet, but
Nope, it's
I'm a
coming up
pilot,
soon.
I feel so bad for Jake Lloyd, so I apologize for
Yeah,
whatever
I mean,
disparaging
I've always
marks I
felt
make
really
about his
bad for
performance.
him.
Here it
It's
comes.
here's the thing is,
You're a slave? Oh
yeah,
god.
there's some
I love it
deliveries
so
though that are
much.
just too good,
I mean,
but
poor Jake Lloyd. I mean, really, that guy's having a tough go.
it really should have served as a precursor for how other people would be treated in the Star Wars series.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider like, he's, and I don't know how much, mental health issues. I'm not gonna, say much about that, but he's had a lot of run-ins with the law. He's had a really rough go of it. I don't know if he's ever said he was suicidal or not, but I know that Ahmed Best, who was uh, uh, the mocap operator for Jar
Hmm.
Jar, and I think he was Jar Jar's voice, very much has said that he was suicidal several times over
Yeah,
the way
just
he
because it's
treated
like
him, and it's like,
constant harassment.
yeah, and I guess in that sense, when you look back, the current issues are not so current. Like, this stuff has existed in Star Wars fandom for a long time. When you think about the Marie Tran stuff,
Yeah,
and that kind of thing, it's like it's been around for at least this period.
yeah, and it just sucks because it's like I could imagine being Jake Lloyd and like getting a part in Star Wars, right? Like that would be incredible, especially like at that age. If I had a connection to this series, like I would have, or like I did.
Oh my god!
Um,
Not only am I going to be in Star Wars, but I'm going to be Anakin Skywalker.
yeah, exactly. It's like how would I not be able to turn that down? How would it not be like the greatest role that I ever could have managed to get?
Right.
And then as soon as it comes out, I am receiving harassment on the playground daily for it.
Right.
I somehow go from the coolest kid who is shooting Star Wars to like the worst piece of shit.
Right. Yeah, I do. I feel really bad for him. So I'm not gonna like. Well, I'm gonna say his acting is not great, but he was a kid. So
Yeah.
the criticism I have of Anakin Skywalker is going to be leveled on George, and
Yeah.
not necessarily poor Jake. But
No, because like it seems like with child actors that whole whether or not they are good is entirely on the director. Because I mean we've had a bunch of really good child actor performances that it feels just like it's a director thing and
yeah,
not anything else.
well, I think it's like all things. I think there's some uh child actors who have that innate
Yeah.
talent,
Yeah.
more so than others. But I do definitely think, it's one of those things where, where it's kind of known that George isn't the greatest actor director.
Yeah.
That doesn't help, the case any when you have a new kid. And just the character really, bothered me a little bit. This, really super cute, super pure. And I know from a storytelling standpoint, that's kind of where you want to be. You
Yeah.
want the crux of the entire trilogy to be, how did this super, cute, super pure-hearted, you know, pure kid turn into potentially one of the biggest mass murderers in the galaxy?
Yeah.
Just, how does it go from pure good to pure evil? But,
Yeah.
I just feel like there could have been ways to do it that didn't involve having him be, you know, seems like he's 5, but
Yeah.
I think he's supposed to be like 9 or 10 in this, isn't he? Or 9, I
Yeah, I
think.
think he's supposed to be, because that's part of what's supposed to make like the age difference not so creepy. Is I think Padme's even only supposed to be like 14 or 15.
Yeah, I think. Oh God, I should know this, and it's definitely in Wikipedia too. I think she was like 14 because I want to say, in the second episode he's like 18 or 19, and she's like 23 or 24.
Yeah.
Like it's not supposed to be like a giant age difference, but like here you look at it and it's like, she looks like she's like 18 and he's like 6 or 7, 7, 8, something
Yeah.
like that. It definitely like doesn't look great.
No. I mean, when R2D2 looks like he's almost as tall as Anakin.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I was gonna bring up earlier, where it's just one of those things that like I think should have also started spelling the um some of the problems with the trilogy, like basically early on, is just like throwing in these things like R2, 3PO in a second. Some of these things that's just like, yeah, but why? Like why did we have to have like R2 as our character here
Yeah.
beyond recognition?
I'm not I'm not as upset about R2 being here because sure.
Well, and there
Doesn't
was like the
that
fan
doesn't
theory
that
that he's
doesn't that doll look like Maz Kanata?
a little bit, yeah.
Um but this bothers me.
Yeah, him building
Yeah,
3PO.
there was no reason for him to be the creator of 3PO.
No.
And I mean, he in all actuality, he could have been Padme's droid. He was an interpreter.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the queen would need an interpreter droid
Yeah,
to
it'd
deal
be
with some
invaluable.
stuff. It would be
Or
perfectly okay if it was just one of those things where it started and they, the two of them were already together, R2 and
yeah, I mean
3PO.
it could be a thing where as well, like you don't introduce 3PO in this movie, you introduce him in the next movie when she's a senator,
Yeah,
and it makes absolute sense that she would have a translator then. Maybe not as a queen, where it seems like her role is pretty much relegated to just politics on Naboo,
right.
but absolutely outside of that.
Yeah, it was unnecessary. And to me a little bit it speaks to this kind of closeness
Yeah.
that the saga has,
Yeah.
where it's like, everybody is either, there's either a lineage factor or, somebody's tied in with somebody else. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with both the droids being there because then you can turn around and say, like, because they are um, the through line of all of the saga movies.
Yeah.
Originally in the original trilogy, it was supposed to be, um, it was their story. They showed
Yeah.
up in the first couple of minutes and they're in the last frames of Return of the Jedi. It
Yeah.
was very much they were the storytellers. So I didn't have a problem with them
Yeah,
necessarily
because I was
being
going
in
to
it. I just
say,
think they didn't need to be in it the way that they were. And before we get too far, I just wanted to make the comment that that's, I believe, the first time we see Coruscant
yeah.
and Darth Maul, and Darth Maul is two people.
Yeah.
It's
Darth Maul definitely doesn't feel like he should ever have had a speaking line.
yeah, his voice is oh God.
I'm sure you can do it.
Um, Peter Serafinowicz, I believe.
Mhm. Okay.
He was the head of the Nova Corps in Guardians. He also was the Tick for a season or two.
Gotcha.
This last run on Amazon.
Okay.
I would say he was in John Wick too, but you haven't seen any of those.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna say, have you ever heard of that theory that, all these movies are basically, supposed to be, like, being retold by, R2?
I have heard that, yeah.
Yeah, which is supposed to explain the long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. And I'm fine with that if it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting, like, theory. I mean, it's one of those things that's, like, I don't put any stock into any theories really, but it's, like, a fun thing to think about.
Well, and it might be. I don't know. This is why I'm bummed out that I didn't read as much as I wanted to. But I want to say it's like something that George had considered,
Okay,
that this was it was the droid story of what was happening, which is why, they show up in every movie.
right.
R2 is technically the only one that's been in every one of those.
Yeah, although,
Technically,
been asleep for the majority of, 7.
yeah, and I say technically because 3PO's had his mind wiped at least once,
Yeah,
or had his memories wiped at least once. So, he doesn't necessarily remember where, as far as we know, R2 has had, the same memory core the whole time.
which is really interesting, though, because it's one of those things, and granted, this is just, like, of course, this wasn't done, right? But in Episode 4, when they return to Tatooine and wind up at the homestead, it definitely is a thing where, like, oh, okay, well, as soon as, 3PO meets Uncle Owen, he should have been, or as soon as R2, sorry, meets Owen, should have been a thing of like, recognition,
Oh, for sure.
probably translated to 3PO, who would have said something back to the audience, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's just a side effect of telling the prequels, I guess. I think
Yeah, because
that's
it's
one
a
of
thing
my
that you're just not gonna
two
be able to help.
it's one of my two like greatest issues with Star Wars in general. And we'll get into the other one in part 3 or episode 3, but it's this tie-in with this particular stuff, or the Owen, the Lars homestead,
Yeah,
with episode 4,
yeah,
is Owen should have recognized them. Well, maybe not,
yes,
because he had the gray metal body
yeah, that's
um
fair. But R2 hasn't
before,
changed,
but R2 was there for a little bit. Maybe not enough for him to remember 20 years later or whatever. But
right?
Obi-Wan should have recognized them both.
Yeah,
And, there is a lot of things that have come out recently with that, where people have said, well, he might have, and, it's that certain point of view thing where he's like, oh, I don't ever remember owning a droid. Well, he technically didn't ever own a droid.
right.
The idea that he recognizes them but doesn't say anything to Luke, and I guess you have to go that route to make it work, but it's just, there's a lot of lines like in episode 4 that don't make sense in the grand scheme of things anymore.
Yeah, once you add in the prequels, and
Yeah.
granted, that's just an issue with any sort of prequel, right?
Yeah.
I remember it being a big issue in like Halo Reach, where there's like all these new features and weapons added and stuff that we didn't see in any of the previous 3 games, or I guess 4 games. I think ODST came out before then.
Right.
You know, that suddenly it's just like, well, you just kind of have to come up with a head canon to work around it or ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to be like a total negative nanny. It's just one of those things where it's like, like you should have come up with ways to answer those questions.
Yeah,
Because there's definitely like some stuff with, I think, Anakin or the droids or something, that there's some lines, and I'll remember more later, that like Obi-Wan says on Tatooine, where it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make much sense when you go back and see this now, and it's like you guys maybe should have written around that a little better. I didn't notice
Yeah.
the did you see the protocol droid body in the background up on chains?
Yes. Yeah.
I've never noticed that before either. What
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. I want to know what that device is in the back corner of the screen.
which side?
Sitting on the table,
Oh,
there's some device that's like just flashing red.
yeah,
Sure,
looks like
that's
a
on a wiki
microscope.
somewhere. Yeah.
I am really impressed with the hyperdrive core that looks like the Lamet configuration / puzzle box from Hellraiser.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like a 3PO should be out of the house. Not all exposed like that. That's a great
Yeah.
way to get a bunch of sand and shit in there.
And here we go. This is where Lucas takes on the Christian canon.
Yeah, which is a decision
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we didn't even have to go that far. Like, why did we decide on this particular story?
I don't know. I guess like how else do you explain it? And it does like open up a lot of questions, Um we'll get into it more in episode 2, but the theory that Palpatine himself
Yeah.
created Anakin by manipulating midichlorians. Um and he's the source, basically that he's a force birth, or I don't know how else to explain it, but you know what I mean. But that has
Oh,
kind of
here's
risen
all.
up and has created some some theories on Rey,
Yeah.
and Rey's origins and whatnot. I don't know how else. I guess you would, I don't know how else you explain it. I guess it comes around to one of these things that like if you would have already had Anakin as an established character per se, and not a little kid where you meet his mom and everybody else, like you don't even have to explain that.
Yeah, because that's the things I would have been totally fine with. Just like, no, he was just born and he had like really good force potential, which
He was a star
you
pupil,
could play with. Yeah,
right? He was a
exactly. It's
star
like that
pupil. Like he
makes
was
perfect
very,
sense.
yeah, he was strong in the Force. He like picked up the lightsaber quicker. He was more powerful than the other kids. You know,
Like, was the idea of the prophecy even? I can't remember if that was introduced in the original trilogy at all.
yeah, when Qui-Gon's in front of the council, he says, "I discovered a vergence in the Force," and they say, "You speak of the prophecy."
Oh no, I'm referring to the original trilogy. So 4 through
Oh,
6.
sorry. Yeah. Um,
So I don't
no,
remember the
the
whole idea of the
chosen
Force
one.
prophecy being shown in there.
Yeah, the chosen one prophecy, or the prophecy of the one who brings balance to the Force, I don't think was ever mentioned in the original trilogy.
So I mean, that's just another like unneeded addition.
Yeah.
Which I wonder which came first, the idea of the whole immaculate Force conception, or the prophecy idea.
That's a good question.
Although
More
prophecies just feel
slapstick.
like it's like fantasy 101 shit. That's just kind of like you really hope that a person who's been writing for several years could do better.
Yeah. It's working. It's working. I do like the little closer look at Tatooine we get.
Yeah.
Where you see
Yeah,
the
because we
slave
we
quarters and you kind of see the
didn't
cities and
see
stuff. I
much
like
before.
that.
Yeah.
Where do you
Yeah, it
get
is kind
cuts
of
from?
neat. I'm not sure. I was just wondering the same thing.
It's like an excuse for him to get blood, but
Pretty much.
and that's the other thing too is you're taking this kid's blood without consent.
Yeah. That's not great.
See, you kind of hid it from him too. Well, I guess not. I'm checking your blood for infections. Now you run along. It's like, okay, creepy Jedi guy. Like,
Yeah, it's like, hey, give me your child's blood. I need to find out how much adrenochrome I could summon from you.
I guess the midichlorians are kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if we even need to get into like how ridiculous the idea of midichlorians are and how unnecessary that
Here's the
is.
thing: is I'd always assumed when I was a little bit older that what it was basically just a cell or something, like similar to how like how mitochondria got subsumed into our cell structures,
Right.
right? I always assumed that was an organism that was spread throughout the universe in some way, shape, or form
Yeah.
that assisted in the use of the force, but like that force ability itself was already was like an unlimited potential thing,
I think that
wherein like
I
your
think that's
average
kind of
person
how it
could
is though,
get,
right?
because that's what it always seemed like, right? Was it was like, okay, but no, if you just train really hard and work really hard, that you have the potential to do amazing things with the force, and that's not like, oh no, you just have like 1,000 more organisms than the next guy.
I had always assumed that like the force sensitivity wasn't in everybody, so like not everybody could just train and use the force. Some people were more adept at it than
It's
others.
it's it's like what's it is was it sickle cell anemia,
Sure.
right? And it's just like some people got sickle cell anemia and some people don't.
Right.
And so similar to how some people are less susceptible to malaria, some people are more susceptible to force.
Right.
It's just like weird space genetics.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's the other thing, right? Is it's like, well, now you have to really talk about like, okay, well, why is this organism present in everybody, even though they evolved separately?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to completely misrepresent this, so I apologize. But Lucas's idea for the sequel trilogy had to do with
A
um,
whole like inner space
yeah,
situation.
a deeper understanding of the midichlorians, and the midichlorians were actually from like what was it, a dimension called the Wills?
Yeah,
Like
or
the
something
Wills
like
was
that.
actually like a sub dimension of force power or something like that, and the
Here's the
midichlorians
thing.
were like a conduit between.
I
Um,
remember reading through that whole write up and being like,
yeah,
"Oh, I'm really glad that we didn't get that."
yeah, and I don't know that that's ever, because I don't think anybody has ever seen the treatments to his sequel trilogy.
Hmm.
I don't think anybody has ever seen it, because one of the bones of contention after Lucas sold um, Lucasfilm
Oh,
to Disney was that he gave him his treatments to it and said, "Here you go. Hopefully you'll use them." And then he was really upset when they didn't.
yeah,
And which is just kind of one of those things where it's like, when you give somebody your treatment and tell them they can use it, or they don't have to, and they don't. It's just one of those things. But so I don't know that anybody has really seen those treatments per se. A lot of people have basically said, "Yeah, I know somebody who's seen them or knew parts of it, etc." I know that it's been indicated that they were going to get into the Wills,
yeah,
which has been hinted at. In Rogue One, you had the Guardians of the Wills.
right.
I remember I used to have, it still exists, I just don't have it. A family member has it, but I had a production script from Episode 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it said on the front, Star Wars. Um, it was like Star Wars: The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills.
Okay.
On the front of it, so Journal of the Wills has always infamously or famously been, the kind of the story of Star Wars per se, but then you ended up getting, the Guardians of the Wills, and I think the Church of the Force was supposed to have um, delved into that bit. So he, like, the setup is there to get into the Wills. Um, but I know it was going to get in that. I know it was one of those things where Luke was training Leia to be a Jedi. Um, I don't remember the other stuff. I'll have to look more into it by the time we get into that. But there were some things in there. It was like, eh,
Yeah,
it's, although it had, it could have had the potential to be really great, because if one thing, I think Lucas is one of the greatest storytellers out there.
right.
His world building is amazing. I don't think he should write
Yeah,
the
he's
screenplays,
does
and I
some
don't think
really
he should
like
direct.
interesting stuff in world building, but he needs like someone to take over script writing. Like he needs somebody to do dialogue for him
Yeah,
and to do cleanups on his script because otherwise it's just bad.
yeah. He needs an or is it Irwin or Irvin Kershner, who did
I couldn't tell you.
Empire Strikes Back. He needs to give the blueprint to somebody and have them have them write it, have somebody direct it, because
I
he
always
he
found
just.
that Alien to be real dope.
So we're getting into the Quidditch match of Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah,
This is like one of those things where it's like, Chris Columbus was basically given a green light to take a sequence and just draw it out through half of a movie after he watched
yeah.
this.
This thing is, I got to looking at the time left. I'm like, we don't actually have that many story events left. So where's this extra time coming from? It's like, oh right, we
I would
got
be
like
curious.
25 minutes of pod racing to get
Yeah,
through.
I don't actually know what the running time of the pod race is. Do you?
I don't, but we can figure it out. We'll count it at like about probably. When would we want to start the segment? Do we want to start when it actually is like go, or when shit
Yeah,
got introduced?
yeah. We probably should have because I brought a stopwatch up. We probably should have done it when it went to this.
This is probably about what we can call it. Probably about 3 minutes ago. Like yeah, about like 50, either 55, 54.
This is great because I touted myself as such a giant Star Wars nerd, and I keep forgetting things. So
Oh, you're good.
sorry, kids.
Did you ever play the Star Wars Pod Racer
I
game?
did, yeah. I think we've played it
Yeah.
before.
Oh, probably. Because I remember the N64.
Yeah.
I think that was the
The
game that you
poodle.
got me for it.
Yeah.
Was Star Wars Pod Racer, and I played so damn much of that game. Didn't understand what I was doing at all. But I remember playing so much of it.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I don't think I understood like the sliders for like handling and acceleration
Yeah.
and top speed. I
Right.
was just like, I'm just gonna play Anakin because I like Anakin, or I'll play
I'm a
the weird
person.
like antenna
My
dude
name is Anakin.
because I like the weird like dumb X ship.
And I kind of half feel like this is unnecessary too.
Yeah, throwing in
Having
the huts
Jabba. I
for
mean, I
a
guess it
reason.
makes sense, but I forget
What is
what
with that
that
hair
Hut's
on the
name is
person in the
behind
back
him.
left? You see that with the weird like red like frond hair thing
Yeah.
going on? Yeah, that's weird.
Each one of those people have names and backstories that I don't know.
Oh,
I
I
feel
know.
like
I
I'm failing,
remember
but
what's his name? Like Jacob Fullerton from Funhouse could probably tell you all of them,
yeah.
and it's kind of fucked.
So here's the thing. I came and visited you guys one time when I lived in Kansas, and it was one of the few times I flew, and somebody had given me the episode 1 novelization as a gift.
Oh yeah.
And I read through the first little bit, and I almost want to say like it mentions in the book that he knows that she's the queen from the get-go,
Oh really?
or at least senses it.
I think that would make some sense, right? Like being able to sense like a pretty constant like aura of deception or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say I always liked all the different designs of the pod racers.
Yeah, here's the thing. The pod racers are cool.
Yeah.
And the graphics are incredible.
I just think it's maybe a thing where like, okay, but if we just did this as like a one lap like sprint or something
Yeah, I just
instead
think
of
it
three
went,
laps.
and Lucas loves racing. I mean, look at American Graffiti,
Right.
and stuff like that. Like, oh, look, there's
Yeah, Warwick
Warwick
Davis.
Davis. That's unnecessary. That's a waste of food.
Right?
But yeah, when you when you look at all of the moving parts and stuff in this, I mean, it's amazing work as far as the graphics and everything else go.
Yeah.
But it really is one of those things where it's like, okay,
Although to be fair, could you imagine watching this in theaters again and like having the seats rumble from all the pod racers and stuff? Like that would be
I wish I
kind
could
of cool to
see.
revisit.
I wish I could see it again for the first time.
Yeah.
Because it is one of those things where I really have seen it hundreds of times, probably,
Yeah.
and that luster of it is kind of gone. But I imagine, I can't really remember, but I imagine on the day we were completely blown away by this.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
fairly certain. Like, I think it's one of those things. I know a lot of people on their first viewing were already like, "Wow, what shit!" But I really feel like it wasn't until probably for me, my like 7th or 8th viewing, I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's some things I would change.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing when when they crash, when you like look at all of the pieces coming off,
Yeah, I'm just
you know.
imagining the like render time for all of this. Like,
Oh, they have
I
server
would love to see
farms.
that statistic.
There is a YouTube channel, and God damn it, I can't remember the name, but it's basically effects guys that like go over effect shots, like good and bad effect shots.
Yeah.
And they were going through this, and they were still like blown away at the physics and the when something would blow up.
Yeah, like
All of
how they managed to like put weight to it, which is the thing that I didn't really
yeah,
feel in a lot of the rest of this movie so far. These CGI creatures like having actual weight,
yeah.
but during this scene in particular, you definitely feel like, oh, there's weight to all of these. Like when it hits something, it feels like something got hit.
Thank God for that Second Amendment. They really are like the rednecks of Tatooine, though, aren't they?
Yeah, I was always like way too fascinated with the Tusken Raiders as a kid.
I was.
Between them and the Jawas, where it's just like
Yeah.
I just want to know what's underneath that hood.
Yep. I don't think that's ever been shown
I don't think so.
to this day. There's been no books or art things or anything that's ever shown what's underneath, which is amazing. I could do without the Three Stooges droids, though.
Yeah. Even if they're like really cute, it's just like it
Yeah,
just
it's,
yeah.
it's true they are, and this makes me sad.
Yeah. I never really thought about like the body dimensions of something like a Rodian as a child.
Yeah, he's a little pudgy, isn't he?
Yeah, and
That
their
Rodian
eyes like
eats
feel
well.
even worse like as far as like overall proportion.
It's kind of great. I
Yeah.
think in that YouTube video from those guys, I want to say there's a shot of the crowd at one point. You can literally see where they crowd stamped,
Mhm.
where like there's a block of people, and then it like repeats down the way,
Yeah.
which you've seen a movie entirely too many times when you're like looking at that kind of stuff.
I mean, to be fair, if you like just were to slow it down to half speed, I'm sure it would give you enough time to look.
Yeah,
Because that's usually I think you know uh I guess trick to those things is it's assuming that you're watching it at a normal speed and it's just gonna cut away too quick for you to be able to notice.
yep. That's certainly what Michael Bay hopes for.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because otherwise you would realize like, okay, wait, what's actually going on with these Transformers?
Yep, exactly.
It
That was
just
one
turned
of the
into like
big
a
things
weird
that
mush
I
blob.
almost universally heard from people about Bumblebee was the fact that you could see what was going on because they were like medium to wide shots when they'd be fighting,
Yeah.
and the way they were colored and shaped and stuff. They're like, we could tell who it was, and tell me how this kid is not flipping like
I
out of that
was
thing.
I was about to say, can you imagine how nauseous you would be?
Oh my god.
Also, at that speed that you're rotating, like I don't know if your seatbelt's gonna hold up to it.
Yeah, we're nitpicking, by the way. It's fine.
And when you've watched a movie this many times, like how could you
Yeah,
not?
I do like how he's like, okay, I got a magnet in here. Somebody was like, dude, he's using the force, and I'm like, no, he's got a magnet.
Yeah.
It's not the force. I do like kind of seeing, it does like kind of go into how, he can fix anything, right? Like he's making his in cockpit repairs right there. I always dig that kind of stuff when they're like hot wiring stuff and moving junk around. That
Yeah,
always
when you get the idea of
makes
they're
me
just
happy.
like, okay, I know I've got this part and this part, and I'll just have to make it work.
Yep.
Man, just think, a couple more inches and you would have just full on ganked that kid.
Yeah, I guess they did wipe somebody out. Imagine that. The way that thing was spinning when he
Yeah.
I swear too in the background sometimes when they're talking about a racer, if you look in the background of those announcers, it looks like the screens from the Pod Racer game
Yeah.
when you'd be choosing characters.
Yep. You know, if you think about it, really, that Tusken Raider was just about Lee Harvey Oswald. Could have gone full Red Dwarf and just like saved the whole galaxy, but
Yeah.
I think about that episode way too often.
It's one of my favorite episodes.
It's such a good one.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just like it has that like really interesting mix of like comedy and kind of drama at the same time.
Yeah, I mean
And you like,
it's basically a Quantum Leap episode.
yeah. Have you seen that Quantum Leap episode?
No, I haven't.
That is one of the most haunting episodes I ever saw of Quantum Leap.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, where he's crying at the end of it, and because he couldn't save Kennedy, and what's his name? The hologram.
I don't know. Is it like I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't. Anyway, he goes up to him and he's like, "I couldn't save him." And he's like, "You were never meant to. He was not the one
Yeah.
you were supposed to save." And basically saying he was supposed to save Jackie and not him.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. It's always giving me the chills when I. And can we talk about the announcers too?
Sure.
I'm not wild about the announcers.
No, me neither. They're
That
supposed
whole
to be like
that whole
I can remember.
NASCAR, like and coming up on the blah 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 is Anakin Skywalker coming around the turn, and it's like what?
Oh man, we had a whole good moment about pod racing being NASCAR last night.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, do you not remember this?
No.
It was really early on.
Yes.
We were talking about how excited we were to be
Yeah.
covering this, and I was like, "Oh man, it'll be great to just do NASCAR announcements over all of pod racing."
Yep. Now look in the background, you can kind of see
Yeah, where you
that
got the
other.
like rotating display and
Yeah, it looks just like the. I didn't think about it until you had mentioned the Pod Racer game, but it's like this part I don't quite understand. It's like he's plugged something into the other side and it makes it magically work.
yeah,
Not quite sure.
it seems like it's balancing power loads or something.
Yeah. And these always these switches that he grabs and he flips like 5 or 6 times. He does it with the Naboo starfighter at the end too.
Yeah,
You ever seen the animatics that they did of this?
I don't think so.
It was it John Knoll? It was somebody's kid that they put in and like just filmed him with a camcorder, basically, like kind of in that suit in the cockpit, and they're like blowing wind and stuff, and then they would do the very like rudimentary, you know, 3D animatics so that they could show it to Lucas and say this is what it's going to look like.
Right.
Like that, it had to have been a blast for that kid. I would have loved it.
Oh yeah, be a good time. Oh yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying about the crowd stamping.
Yeah, it's
You get like
there
the
was a
same
couple of
person
shots
in
of the
in the
announcers
bright
too, and when you
shirt.
looked up in the corner, it was like, ooh, those background
Yeah,
crowds look a little.
it's
See
like
him?
why are you
Look at
facing
him right
towards my
there.
camera?
It's like it looks very flat, and it's like, ooh, this is
Mm-hmm.
Tecmo Bowl looking.
This is some like you know NBA '98
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. Here he goes. Ready? Here comes my favorite term. Now look at those engines, though. That is amazing.
Yeah,
I love this. Here it comes. Pudo.
it's so good. Here, Smeg, can you read off your time counter for me?
Yeah, time counter for me right now is 109:34, 35, 36.
Okay, so you're about 2 seconds behind me.
Oh, okay. There you go. See the graphic on the back?
Okay, I'm now at 109:55,
Okay.
56, 57. Yeah. So here's the thing. We're only at 110 now, right? Which means that
Roughly.
that whole sequence was only about 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was right about 16.
And it feels like it's so much longer, and I don't know why.
Yeah. What are you at now, time code wise? I think I jumped ahead a little too much.
110, 33, 34, 35.
Okay, let me see if I can jump back 10 seconds. Okay, what are you at now?
110, 41, 42, 43.
Yeah, I'm 3 seconds now.
I mean, we're good. 3 seconds isn't really anything.
Yeah, it's just tough if I'm like, hey, look at that.
Oh, yeah, but you're fine.
And you can kind of see in the background one of the tracker droids go by.
Yeah. Yep, there it goes. Um, So here's the thing: we were talking about the weird Asian accents and Caribbean accents, and then you got the weird like Jewish tropes
With Watto.
with Watto.
I was just thinking that exact same thing when he was talking too. That we really hadn't mentioned that was pretty rough.
Yeah, yeah, it's got some problems. And it's just I don't know. Don't do you remember if it was this bad in episode 2 really beyond Jar Jar and I guess Watto coming back?
There was some Jar Jar, some Watto. I'm trying to remember
Cuz I don't remember if
if
the Kaminoans had anything like particularly egregious.
no, they were just like they were very much like, "Hello, I'm gonna talk to you just like this the whole time."
They were really like
They weren't bad
had
at
like a
all.
dreamy thing to them.
There was the greasy alien in the diner.
Yeah, Dex.
Yeah, but I don't think he was
No,
real
he was
bad
very much
either as
just
far as
like
like accents go.
no, he was
Um,
really just what you think of when you think of a diner cook.
yeah, the aliens in the Separatist Council. I don't think any of them were really.
No, not besides the Nemoidians again.
Yeah, yeah, but like stuff that's new though. I don't really think there
Yeah.
was anything added to it that was quite as egregious.
Like even the Geonosians, like maybe is like the closest I could think with basically the South Park clicking.
Yeah,
But South Park, of course, came afterwards, so it's not like it drew from that.
yeah, yeah. It's still like a cool language though.
It's really cool. I've always loved the sound of the Geonosians.
Yeah, yeah. I got some great Geonosian stuff when we get to Rogue One with them.
Okay.
This whole sequence bothers me.
Oh yeah.
It's just the I freed your son. Oh, can I go, mom? And it's like, well, it's two things. Like one, it's too cute and it's too fast.
Right. It's because the thing is, you could have actually played this for the emotional resonance and everything.
Yeah. Two, like if you want to take it seriously, like what an incredible decision by a mom
Yeah.
to say like, you know, I don't want this life for you. So if you can go off and, you know, and be taken care of by the Republic and have a life, like do it. Even if I don't see you again, like, you know, like to me that is an amazing decision.
Yeah.
I just don't think it was executed very well.
No.
You know, just the whole thing, you know, and then we get this other shot with him and 3PO and it's like, sorry I didn't get to build you all the way. I'm going off in a starship. And I guess maybe it fits like being a little kid and not realizing the gravity of
Maybe, but
what's
at the
really
same time, it
happening.
seems like
Maybe
he
I'm being
just
too
had
harsh.
that. Seems like he just like coming off that moment of having like a semi emotional goodbye to this is just like it's a really weird tonal shift.
Yeah. And I think maybe it makes it too light.
Yeah, it does.
I don't want, you know, I don't want to see Anakin this light.
What's with this camera style during this moment?
So this
The
is
thing
the
I've
only
always wondered
time I can
about.
think of that we ever saw a droid POV.
Yeah,
And this is what it is. It's shot from 3PO's point of view.
yeah, it's such a weird shift to go from like what we usually get to what feels like a handheld
Right.
type
Yeah,
moment.
that is really weird. I think it's the only time they've actually done a droid. Now this is a great scene for Lucas.
Yeah.
You know, this bit where he's actually saying goodbye is probably one of the only true emotional bits of it. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
absolutely.
you nailed this. You nailed the bit where she's, you know, does the, you know, you can't stop time, like, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And then when he gets up and leaves, it's like, yeah, that is the emotional resonance you need to have.
Yeah.
You know, because while it's a fantasy, like there's a lot of like serious shit happening in your fantasy.
Yeah, well, because that's the thing is it just feels like it's never really addressed that like, oh hey BT Dubs, we're dealing with a slave planet. And with people who have grown up in slavery.
Right.
And like we're just kind of gonna accept it and breeze past it.
Right.
Besides the short like objection from I think Padme about how like slavery is illegal in the Republic,
Right.
you know, there's really like not much being directed towards it other than just like, oh no, it's just the desert and bad things happen in the desert.
Right. Yeah. I love this part. Like it is one of those things where it's like, okay, we're on our adventure now. This is like the real deep, serious moment.
Yeah.
I love this look where it's like, he's just like, all right, time to
This
unleash hell.
bike always seemed a little like a funky design to me.
The bike.
Yeah.
This was my favorite mount in Star Wars Galaxies.
Oh, absolutely.
I like how the robot's just kind of like, well, I guess I'll just stay here, boss.
And then we like just jump right to them already running, and it's like, oh well.
Yeah. That kid could have died right there.
Yeah.
I remember this because I was so happy there was a lightsaber fight.
Yeah,
And
especially
like
like
a real
finally.
lightsaber fight.
Oh yeah.
The CG dust is like maybe a little weird, but
Yeah. Then in the way that it's choreographed, where it's just like such close cuts.
yeah. I have not talked at all, and we're almost past that point about what a horrible actor the pilot is.
Yeah, he's not great.
Power's back. Yoinks.
That jump is also something that has
It's
not.
rough.
Yeah, it's rough.
It's rough. Plus, you see that shot, and I thought the same thing of the shot of the ship flying off with R2 in the back of it.
Yeah.
It's like, you should be flying off, son.
Yeah. Similarly, that force jump's not really used much either.
Not a lot. I do really like how he's like sweating and panting and stuff because
Well, isn't the idea that basically like lightsaber fights are supposed to be quicker than non-force users would be able to keep up on? Like they're supposed to be
yeah, but
moving at such fast speeds and stuff, but that's really hard to convey in
yeah,
film.
yeah. Plus, it's it goes in the environmental
This
thing,
spider
right?
walker.
You're on a you're on a desert planet of varying gravity and heat and humidity, and it's
Yeah.
sapping the shit out of you.
I never really thought about the changes in gravity and how that would affect uh not only like just lightsaber fights but also like warfare. Like it would be so interesting to see their like artillery calibrations
Be gone when
based
he's
off of what
Santa
planet they're
Claus.
on.
Yeah. You were speaking of the spider chair.
Yeah, the spider chair I kind of always dug. It's like that's really kind of neat. Granted, it's a bit superfluous, right? It's like why
Yeah.
have this? But it's kind of a cool design.
So the idea is, this really confused me when I was younger, but the idea is that they already established the trace
Right,
when they received the message.
right.
They never really get into that very well. I think it's really confusing how they told it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that they connected and got the message and they established a connection trace while they were watching it.
Gotcha.
Because Obi-Wan goes up and says, "Do not reply because they'll track it." And then they mention later, I think it's Palpatine and Maul. Somebody says the connection trace. Or maybe somebody says they're trying to establish one, but basically when they receive the message, they trace the reception of it and
Right,
found them on Tatooine.
it's like opening a an email attachment.
Yeah, and I remember having to go and looking it up on a wiki or something because I didn't quite understand, how they found them.
Yeah,
And this is another bit that I like too that's not usually addressed, kind of like we were just talking about, the fact that he's so cold.
yeah,
Typically in Star Wars, people go to all these different planets, you don't really see any effect of it. Where it's like, no, he's lived on a hot planet and space is cold.
yeah.
You never really see like, the effect of, I went from this frozen planet to this jungle planet and nobody ever really blinks an eye.
Yeah.
And this little thing will come into play later.
Yeah.
It seems weird. It just seems forced, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. By the way, I love the look of
That's what I was about to
Coruscant.
say. The look of Coruscant is always like
Yeah.
so cool. Like seeing just all those lights from orbit.
Yeah.
Although man, I gotta wonder what the air quality is like.
Um
I think that might actually have been addressed in oh, maybe in like one of the games or something about how poor like the living conditions are the closer you get towards the planet's surface.
Yeah.
or the
Oh
lower
yeah.
down you get because of like how much like smog and shit
Yep.
there is.
Who introduced us to Coruscant? Do you know?
No.
Timothy Zahn
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the what is it? The Dark Empire trilogy, I think it is, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think so.
I like the look of the Praetorian Guards.
It's here's the thing is like if you look at the current Supreme Chancellor, he looks like he should be the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's got that like that look to him. Like if you threw on some facial
You know
hair,
what he's?
he would
You
be
know,
very like Peter Baelish.
to me, you know what he looks like? Kneel before Zod,
Yeah, that's fair.
because he played Zod.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's
This is
very
one of
hard
those
to
things. Watch
pass up.
this. Okay, see ya. We're grateful to you. Bye.
God, those backgrounds look so blurry.
That was kind of the secret, though, back then, right?
Yeah, you just shot it, or you just had all your backgrounds as extremely out of
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah, you put him out of focus to give him some
Some
supposed
cover.
depth, and yeah.
I do like that those small details on that speeder though, like those little scratches and everything in the
Yep.
paint.
Yeah, they look lived in.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I really liked about when you came to like Star Wars compared to like Star Trek, especially even in the original trilogy, was everything looked so lived in. It looked dirty.
Yeah.
And I love that.
One of those things I do really appreciate out of episode 2 though is the variety of color in the cityscape.
Yes.
Where instead of just those same beige ships or whatever passing by, that like they give them color.
Yep.
Like Anakin takes a yellow speeder. There's like reds and purples and everything in the backgrounds and all
Right.
that.
Yeah, you can definitely track too how the tech is improving as the movies go.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of those things too. I love his hair in this.
Here's the thing. I've always dug like the various outfits that the Queen has worn throughout
Yeah.
episode 1.
Right.
Like just the number of different styles and everything. I remember finding a write up a while back. I'll have to see if I can dig it up again. Uh, that was a write up from the person who was like in charge of designing a lot of these wardrobes.
Yeah.
And the like thought process that they went through in trying to figure out these things.
I guess that's her hair on the top too, isn't it?
Oh, I guess so, because I mean it
Oh,
is
it
the
is,
same
isn't it?
shade. That's a bit weird. Here's the thing though, is I do have to wonder like how that fashion style would have or fashion trend would have evolved on like Naboo or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody would ever trust anybody who has like an exclusively red room.
Right.
It's like, yes, this is a good guy. Oh man, the long necked one.
Okay, so I have to say something.
Yeah.
This is probably one of my favorite memories of my life is right here. The look on your face when Yoda showed up on screen. I'm not kidding you. You audibly gasped. You went and you pointed to the screen and stared at me, and I was like, "Yeah, it's Yoda," because we had watched the original trilogy so many times together.
Yeah.
That was the minute, I think, that moment that you were like, just boom. When Yoda showed up, you were just like, holy shit, I'm in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the stuff, you're not really used to. It's not anybody you really know. But when Yoda popped up, you were like, your mind literally had blown into little.
Well, and especially since like the only time we've ever seen him in the original trilogy, he's like a sickly old dude
Yeah.
or slightly insane dude. I love how many of these people don't show up again in later council scenes.
Yeah. I believe, again, don't quote me on this, but the woman on the left side on that one shot is, I know you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, but I believe that's Kanan Jarrus's.
I think so because I remember
master.
I think I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading through like all these council pages on Wikipedia once.
I knew she was on the council, and I'm pretty sure that's her.
I loved seeing Yordle as well. Yordle was always like a really fun thing to see.
Yeah.
The idea of there being two of Yoda species out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess to be fair, that's just the
Thanks,
general
dude.
motif for this whole area. Is just like we're just gonna do reds.
Yeah, it's royal.
Yeah, I guess so. God, how much product do you think must be in her hair to like
How
get
long do
into
you
all
think?
these?
Here's the thing. It's amazing that there's stuff in here that I've never seen before, and I've literally seen this a couple hundred times. The fact that that's her hair.
Yeah, like a just like an ornamental headdress. Like I have to wonder
Right.
how long her actual hair is.
I don't know, but it's really long in what is it, Sith?
Return of the Sith, Revenge of the
Revenge
Sith,
of the Sith. When she's
Attack of the
brushing
Clones.
it,
Is
like
that what
talking
they're
to
calling
Anakin
it?
one time, I think it's like really, and of course, the ET guys are in here.
Yeah. Did you ever see the video where I think it's Natalie Portman and Ewan McGregor find out that they're calling it Attack of the Clones?
No.
Oh man, that's another great one where they find out like on the red carpet that that's what they're calling it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
What
it might
was
have
the
been maybe
reaction?
maybe it was for some other movie that was premiering, but I'll have to see if I
Oh,
can dig it up for you. The dude on the left there with the weird
the tusks.
horns tusk
Yeah,
things. That guy also was another one that I was always like super into and want to know more about. And
yeah.
then like I grew up, I'm like, why the fuck would I spend time memorizing his wiki?
He's
No,
got a
thank you.
fascinating story though.
Apparently
He
everybody
uh
does.
he ends up like surviving the war,
Oh yeah.
the Civil War, and going on. Yeah, he ends up we'll get into it
What's
more
with
when we get
the
into
sorry, but what's the with that Nemoidian's like Pope hat?
oh
That's weird. Anyway, sorry, you were saying survives the Civil War.
well, yeah, during the Civil War, we'll talk about it when it comes during the resistance or the um whatever they're calling it, imperial era, whatever. But the emperor basically disappears from public view
Mm-hmm.
for years, like the last years, and he creates an inner council that actually rules the empire, and he's on it.
Right.
Like he survives the entire process all up until the I think it's called the remnants, but basically after the Civil War is over and everything.
Because I think one of those ideas was that was always in place was that there was something else that the emperor like had to have been working on, whether it was just like quashing the rebellion or as like explored in later like expanded universe or now Legends content like an outside force. Like it just always seemed like the emperor should have had like something bigger to
His
focus on.
Wookiees. Well, but yeah, and that's the thing in the new
Oh,
canon.
there's
He
the
is
ETs.
there. They are. Yeah. Um, in the new canon, he is, and that's why he's not seen. A is because he's become so hideous, and he uses more holograms to try to, appear less hideous. But he's in the unknown regions
Yeah,
and these different places because he's studying the Sith occult
yeah,
and studying, basically witchcraft. And he's going and visiting all these Sith and Jedi temples and getting all these artifacts because he's trying to crack the code of immortality. So he's actually like not really responsible for a lot of the ruling of the empire in the later days. It's this council
yeah.
that's actually doing it. And that I don't remember his name, but the one with the horns is part of that. He's like one of the few non-human people to be like directly involved with the emperor.
The idea of the
I hate
unknown
this look for
regions is
Yoda.
like, oh yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
the idea of the unknown regions is such a like a fun idea that I wish we could explore more in canon. And we're like in film.
Yeah,
Um,
and we might.
maybe. I mean, I really hope so. We'll see what happens with the future of Star Wars, just because it's in kind of a weird spot right now. It seems. Um,
This is my favorite line. Like that's just one of those few like prophetic lines that Lucas comes up with.
Yeah, but I mean
You
that's
know, that's
supposed to be like,
quoted in memes all over the place, but it's like, no, that's absolutely true though.
well,
That's
because that's the Jedi code or whatever.
well, there's like it's like there's no something, there's the force.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
There's
mean,
yeah,
but it's just it's true. Like that's exactly how suffering comes. You know, that's where it comes from.
yeah.
You know, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. You know, it's like yeah, for sure.
Oh man, seeing those eye stalks move individual or not individually, but move separate from the body like that is fucking weird.
What's that?
Like the way that Jar Jar's eye stalks like would shift
Oh,
down or shift back up. Like just it's not like he actually looks with the eyes, right? He just shifts the eye
yeah.
stalks around to look, and that's just weird.
He already kicks into campaign mode. What would have happened if the Antilles family would have taken control of the Senate instead?
Nah, I don't even know,
What
man.
a different story we would have had.
It's kind of interesting because it feels like he almost just like dropped the Antilles there just to still keep people like, hey, still got stuff to do with the
Yeah,
originals though.
right,
Here's another thing that ties in for the future. See, it's all connected.
right. See, look, her hair is that's her hair.
Yeah.
And the thing coming across. My God, I've never noticed this before. You're watching my mind be opened in real time. It's an ugly process, but it's happening.
I wonder like
We signed no treaty.
what process was done to give that little top band that texture. So it looks like a bunch of like beads or something.
No. I think those girls are like trained in like combat too, aren't they?
I mean, I would
Seems like I
assume
read
so.
that somewhere that it's like her personal guard and they can kick some serious ass if they have to. Do you think he planned for this though? Because he acts so surprised that she left, but by the same token, it's like, well, what was the plan if she didn't?
I'm sure that there's like probably 2 to 3 separate plans, right?
Yeah,
Where it's like, okay, well, I've got some other thing waiting to be triggered if like she doesn't leave,
yeah.
and I've got this
Well, and
other
you know,
thing
it
in
is a
case she
thing.
does.
I think that's Kanan's master on the left side of Anakin. I think when it goes to that medium shot again,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, it is something that's visited in Rebels, with Kanan and you know his tutelage is the idea that when you concentrate, you see several versions of the future, and you have to plan for them.
Yeah,
You know, and as Ezra Bridger, who's his Padawan, kind of says that at a couple points where it's like there's three ways this could have went, and you know I acted this way because it fell in this timeline kind of thing.
yeah, doing a whole thing kind of like the Guinan's race, I guess, in
Yep.
Star Trek. I got into like a Star Trek wiki thing again.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was a thing because I was on a Quora question on why Q fears Guinan, and then that led me to then have to like go look up Guinan's race, and it's a whole thing.
I thought now. See, I guess I need to look that up because I thought Guinan was mainly a thing because of the Nexus, the incident with the Nexus.
I couldn't tell you specifically.
Oh
Like I basically pulled it up and I read whatever that guy had written up, and it was just a thing where I'm
yeah,
like, okay, well this is apparently some deep lore nerd shit
yeah.
that I guess I'll look through, but it will probably just remain as an open tab in my phone until it, crashes and can't recover tabs again.
I know that I hate doing this kind of stuff because when people do this, I always say, well, let's see your movie then. I think I would have liked to have seen Anakin already older and be like, you could even had him be Qui-Gon's student,
Yeah,
older, and like him and like Obi-Wan were friends. And then when Qui-Gon dies, like Obi-Wan takes him over as his, master or whatever.
yeah. See, I've always hated the that one statement that you just said, the "Well, let's see your movie then" statement.
Yeah,
Where it's
I
like,
get that way
look, dog,
sometimes, and
that's barring the whole like I was not born into a position in which I would have the connections to acquire funding for a movie.
yeah,
You know, what I'm looking to create here is something that would have been for this section of Star Wars and wouldn't function outside of it the same way.
yeah,
Like it requires that specific universe, and I can't exactly ape that because that is gonna be some problems.
right. And here he is trying to explain the midichlorians to Anakin and pissing off an entire generation of fans.
Yeah.
I would have almost liked to have seen him a little bit older and actually be like Padawans with Obi-Wan
That'd be interesting.
and have them grow up together. I guess it wouldn't fit canon because I think doesn't Obi-Wan say he was a pupil of his? Vader was his pupil
Um,
when he's talking to Luke.
I'm not certain if he did.
They couldn't have been like buddies growing up as Padawans. Like he would have had to have been his Obi-Wan's Padawan at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they walking around the
I don't
that
know.
guy's looking
They
to make sure he
interact
doesn't
so weird
that
with
guy's
the
looking to see if he's hitting his mark.
like the fact that the hologram like gets seated at a table is fucking weird.
Yeah, I like it though.
See again, like another outfit, another hair. Like
Yeah.
what I do want to know is like what okay, so what does the wardrobe that she's got aboard this vessel look like?
It's gotta look like Lando Calrissian's on when he owned the Millennium Falcon initially.
Oh, you sure? Because I was
Like
thinking it was gonna look like the Princess of Druidia
yeah,
and her fucking
the,
suitcases.
it's true. It's a cool design for a ship.
Yeah.
The all chrome kind
Yeah,
of
because that's the thing is I love that all chrome, and it seems like I don't know. I could see like justifications in Star Wars for why it's also like has stealth capabilities because of that. Because that's the same sort of like
yeah.
weird shit that would be used.
It really does look like a stealth or like the SR-71 though, doesn't it?
Yeah, like having this like completely reflective ship is really interesting.
Yeah. Why not? Why can't you use your power to help her?
Yeah,
You used it to get a boat earlier.
you used it to put Jar Jar to sleep when he was annoying you.
That's right.
Which man, that's a whole other thing. It's like okay, cool. So you're telling me that there's never been a Jedi with fucking Bill Cosby?
Oh my
If you
god.
just
Oh
give them
god.
this ability?
Oh yeah. He probably did.
I
That's
mean,
that's a
I
great
guess to be
Jedi
fair,
for you.
that's part of the thing about like having to get them early, right? Is like, you indoctrinate them, and then I guess they just never considered the full range of their abilities.
Yeah, and if they do, I guess you fall to the dark side, right?
Yeah, or you become like a dark Jedi or some shit.
It's one of those things that I'm looking forward to if they truly are developing Knights of the Old Republic movies,
Mm-hmm.
which is the going theory. I really want to see that period of time in film.
Yeah.
When the Sith and the Jedi are basically armies
Yeah,
per
when they're
se.
relative equals, like we saw in like
Right.
that's the thing. The best thing about Sweater has always been its cinematics. Like that
For
one
sure.
where the ship crashes into a Jedi temple, and then like all these Sith uh like
They
assassins
come
and
pouring out of
whatnot
it.
like come pouring out of it, and there's this giant lightsaber fight. It looks so
Yeah.
fucking good.
Yeah. That's like why you just said that. I mean, he's speaking of Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO
Yeah,
online game. Their cinematics are like incredible through all of them. The expansions, all of that stuff.
yeah.
They
They
are the
are all
best.
gorgeous.
Yeah, they are the best I think I've seen. I've seen YouTube reaction
They
stuff where they've
they rival Blizzard's World of Warcraft cinematics for sure.
absolutely,
Like maybe
and
not
some of them
in
can
like
get quite emotional
photorealism, but
too.
like oh yeah, like there's the one with Oh, what is it? Like the two sons or whatever of the
Yeah.
emperor or
Yep.
whatever of
And
the Forgotten Empire, whatever.
yeah, the one after that where it's the lady who's training the princess or whatever,
Oh yeah.
and she gets kidnapped and she goes to try
Yep.
to get her later and she's grown up and she, attacks her. It's like they're amazing.
Yeah, they carry they
Wish the
carry they
wish
carry more emotional resonance than the entirety of Star Wars Episode 1.
Yeah, yes. I love this. This is where she becomes, and I guess we haven't really talked a whole lot about her character,
Yeah.
but this is where, because she's supposed to be like a great diplomat,
Yeah.
and this is where it comes through. Like everybody's butting heads and she goes, "Look, I'm just going to bow before you.
Yeah.
I need you. I'm not above you. I'm willing to kneel before you to show you that I'm not, you know, her character was not executed as well as she could have been in some places, but this is one of those ways where it's like, this is why she's queen, is because she's able to negotiate these diplomatic situations better than most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to Keira
That's
Knightley, who's like, "We've come to you to seek an alliance."
Yeah. It's really interesting that she is like a great diplomat when juxtaposed with like Anakin's martial prowess.
Yes, and they play with that a little bit in like a cutesy, like, cute way in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Where she kind of comes to where, there's one bit where he follows her and she's like, "We're going to do it my way." And then in the arena, she's like, "Okay, I'm going to do it your way."
Yeah.
And it's like, there could have been some great character moments there.
Yeah.
Very much where she's like, she is the master diplomat
Yeah.
and he is very headstrong, rushing it with a lightsaber, and how that works between them.
Yeah.
Boom, bad general. I love I love how he like laughs and just steps over him.
Yeah. That is a thing, right? His boss Nass always seems like just like a guy who would be so much fun to be around, or would maybe be awful to be around.
The parties would be really fun.
Yeah.
Reminds me a little bit of what's his name from Game of Thrones? The wildling
Robert,
guy.
because he definitely
No, the
strikes me as
wildling.
like sort of King Robert esque.
Oh my god, you're actually right.
Yeah.
I love the look of Naboo,
Yeah.
the planet, and I love the look of, what's the city called? Do you remember?
Thebes.
Right. I love the look of the city and everything. It was one of my favorite places. I'll refer to Star Wars Galaxies a lot, which was the original online multiplayer game. It was one of my favorite bits of Star Wars Galaxies was to go to Theed and just walk around because they had modeled it really great after the film.
See, I always just spent too much time on Tatooine. Like, that's where my guild would inevitably like put up roots, and we would build our little
Yeah.
city around there. And I would basically never really have to leave other than to go like place some resource generators in other places.
Yeah, I would just go and check places out. I mean, I was always based out of Tatooine, but I love this.
I definitely like having the
It's
spider walker as a hollow emitter.
yeah. This is one of my favorite lines too, coming up. Wipe them out, all of them. Love it. It was
I,
in the trailer. This was actually in the trailer too. I think this was the opening shot of the trailer.
yeah, I love that like didgeridoo in the background there.
Yep. I just remember seeing this in the trailer and just kind of going, "Oh my god, what is this? What is happening?"
Yeah. Oh man, it's gonna start looking like an epic battle simulator shot pretty soon.
Is it?
Definitely feels like it. It feels like a thing where you'd be like, okay, I want to put down 40,000 Gungans, 20 riding Gungan troops,
Yeah.
let's do 17 shield generators. and
Started up
12
the
catapults
shield.
versus, 5 million droids, and we'll just see which one wins.
How do these shields work?
I'm not sure.
It's like some sort of plasma that just like droops down. This was a shot in the trailer too. I just remember like people just kind of going, what is happening? Like not in a bad way, but kind of just going, what is happening? This is amazing.
Yeah, although it does look like a Windows XP
Yes.
background.
And I can definitely see here how like the effects have aged some.
Yeah.
What you were talking about earlier.
I like the rinky-dink little barrel on
That's
her blaster.
That is a federal offense with playing with laser pointers like that. That
Man,
is a powerful laser. It took that tank down in one shot.
he's using those World
Why
of
are you
Tanks
pulling it away?
tactics.
Take out the rest of the tanks.
No, man, he's played a bunch of World of Tanks. He knows what he's doing. Man, you remember that one like summer where you got so deep into watching like World of Tanks esports?
Oh my god, do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah. Which was great because it was always basically just like, I wonder what those Nemoidians or whatever in the background, what their deal was.
They're shitting pants.
That are just like bald and wearing robes.
Yeah.
But
Did he call him Annie?
I think he did.
I think he did, didn't he?
Yeah. And that was always I couldn't tell if I was bored or mildly entertained whenever you would watch those because it would just be like, and here's just a dude sitting on a cliff.
They usually would flip it around pretty often.
Yeah.
There was usually always something going on. I don't know why. I think there was like one summer I was just into that like big time. Like I'm not a huge esports guy, but for some reason I dug World of Tanks esports coverage for a while.
Yeah. I always did also like the look of the N1 Starfighter.
Yeah.
I think it's just like those colors are really cool. Just the overall design is kind of neat. It looks like kind of like an N64 controller in some regards.
Oh yeah, I never thought about that, but it's true.
Just because it's got that weird like three-prongy deal.
This is an unfair fight.
Yeah. Throw out, 20 pilots against...
Come on, say the line like you're supposed to. So this is like...
Good.
Well, I was just gonna say this is what's kind of become what became the formula for like Jedi. Is, our heroes are kind of broken up into 2 or 3 groups.
Yeah.
And it's typically a space battle going on with a ground battle at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is not necessary.
No.
And I think in Attack of the Clones, they don't really do.
No, they don't.
They pretty much keep it to the one battlefield. And in this one, I felt like he was trying to capture that same formula that Jedi had. And, it wasn't as effective, I don't think.
I think part of it is just like the pacing is so different.
Probably,
because you got this frantic battle in the hangar. You've got a pretty frantic like dogfight going on up in the space. And then you just got this like slow deploying of troops.
Well, and I think the problem is the ground battle is kind of comedic.
Yeah. Oh, it's entirely comedic because you got the comedic force of the droids versus the comedic force of the Gungans. So I guess, to be fair, the shield is the same thing that their cities must be built out of.
Yes. And here we go with a Wicket W. Warwick callback. Remember that?
No.
Wick during the Battle of Endor.
Oh, yes. Now I remember.
I like those guns.
I like the background actors who definitely looked like they were like,
I don't know. What am I looking at? It's all green.
Yeah.
This does kind of crack me up a little bit. Qui-Gon said to stay in the cockpit. This is one of the most badass shots of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Ray Park just knocks it out of the park. No pun intended. He just looks so freaking menacing.
Yeah.
I don't like nobody else. I don't think there's been another. I mean, with the exception of like Vader, I don't think there's been another villain in Star Wars that's looked menacing like that.
No, no, not at all.
You absolutely believe that there's like hatred in the dark side running through him, and he absolutely would shred you to pieces given the opportunity.
See, so I'm thinking about I would have loved if he'd survived this one.
Yeah,
Still killed Qui-Gon, but managed to like make an escape or something.
yeah,
Just because you can play a whole emotional thing of like having Obi-Wan have to confront him again and like not actually being over his anger.
yeah.
And you could play so
Well,
much
and I
stuff
know
with
that you
it.
haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels.
And I'm certain that it gets played with there because of him coming back and whatnot.
Well, it's like the whole it's the whole like his like his mental and emotional stuff, and it gets into family issues with him, and then there's always the Obi-Wan thing going on, but that's one thing I think unfortunately was relegated outside the movies but was written and played out beautifully was his arc.
Yeah.
That is one thing that they definitely retcon per se that was absolutely executed perfectly.
Yeah, it seems like the prequel trilogy just had a major villain problem. Where it was clear that they
Yep.
were trying to play off like Palpatine
They
as an
needed fillers
overarching like
before.
Vader, but it's just kind of like
Yeah.
it doesn't really work. He doesn't have a physical presence in the same way. You don't
Well,
really feel
yeah, and
menaced at all by Palpatine.
and let's not forget Dooku,
Yeah.
who was the stand-in apprentice in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't feel menaced by him at all.
No.
Although Christopher Lee,
Like
actually really
Christopher Lee puts
did great.
a
But
like a fantastic performance for it, and I definitely don't necessarily think that he needs removed out of number two. I
right,
what I almost would have liked was a building of villain forces throughout number two.
yeah,
But I mean, I don't know what that would have looked like in like the overarching narrative and stuff. So
right. This really bothers me.
yeah,
This this whole like he just stumbles into everything like, oh, this button. Let's try rolling. That's a neat trick. It's like, oh my god,
stumbling into
are we
victory.
really doing this?
Oh, actually, you know, what,
All
I
right,
guess that's
go left.
I
It's
guess
like
that's the underlying theme for this whole fight is just people stumbling into victory.
kind of right. Even Obi-Wan in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, if Qui-Gon wasn't dead and didn't have his
Here
sabers
comes
just staying on laying on the ground, then
I think. Yep, there's John Knoll that just died. He was the head of special effects and also one of the creators of Photoshop.
oh, bless Photoshop.
John Knoll is also the guy who came up with Rogue One.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
When they got sold to Disney, Kathleen Kennedy pulled him in and said, "What do
Right, and
what are you
he
thinking?" And he goes, He goes, the opening crawl of A New Hope said they just won their first major battle, and spies took the plans. He goes, I want to see how that happened, and then she was like, okay.
yeah.
That's a good trick. And it's just like, oh god.
It's real bad, and I definitely don't
Yeah, I
blame
shouldn't
him.
harp on it that much because I don't want it to be a giant bitch fest, but I like their guns.
Which ones? The
The guards,
yeah.
Ascension guns. That's a cool shot, but it does look a little fakey now.
Yeah, very much.
Watch this guy
Also,
that
man,
is
yeah,
super slow on the. See it?
yep.
Whoop.
Them coming up on
And
the
then he
ropes
catches
looks
up.
extremely goofy as well.
Yeah.
Also, it's like, why'd you guys have to shoot it out? You could have just busted it out.
No, dude, you gotta. If I had a gun like that, I'd shoot it out. I'm shooting everything. I don't. Here's the thing, though, and I love this fight. This is one of my favorite fights. I just don't understand like
The like
what
setting.
is happening. Yeah, like why? What is this? I guess it's supposed to be like the power generators of the whole like
Yeah, from what I understand, I
palace
think
and
it's either
stuff,
like
but
the
it's just
power
like
generators or like a shield generation for the palace
yeah,
to prevent like aerial bombardment and stuff.
yeah,
Something along those lines. I don't know. I remember reading it forever ago, but it's just like not immediately clear.
yeah,
Also, like there's some issues with backgrounds and coloring, like right there with you and McGregor with that purple background, where it's like, well, he just blends in too well.
yep. This is
Although,
back in the days when like purple was used a lot in CG because it was CG.
yeah,
There was that period of like Babylon 5 and like Farscape where everything was like had a lot of purples in it because, hey, look, it's CG.
yeah, purples and blues and stuff.
Yep.
Um, can't believe that we
I
went the
love
whole
this
time
bit.
without mentioning like how fucking good Duel of Fates is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We really haven't talked about
Like
that
any
at
of the
all. It's
music
still
to
one of
it.
my favorite pieces.
Duel of Fates is easily. Here's the thing, I will say, for all the shit that the prequels like gives you, it's definitely like John Williams at his best. I think like he has some of the most memorable pieces out of just this prequel trilogy.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if it tops the original trilogy, but there's definitely this and
Like that
uh,
Mustafar battle scene with between Obi-Wan and
yeah, that was
Anakin. Like that one is just like
I think that's just called Anakin versus Obi-Wan, I think, isn't it?
it might be.
The one that's very Duel of the Fates like.
Yeah, where it's just like dum 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 dum
Yep.
dum
Yeah,
dum
and then they actually
dum.
put I think Duel of Fates in the middle of that fight too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that and what is it? Is it Beyond the Stars or something? It's basically like the love theme.
yeah.
That's an amazing piece too. There's another one too I need to look up. It's like Padme's something that's like really great. Not that I don't think there's some great pieces in the sequel trilogy,
Yeah,
but
it's definitely like a little bit
Ray's
weaker.
stuff,
I don't think that I'd
yeah,
come back
Ray,
to the sequel trilogy as much for music.
yeah, I've some of his stuff is really great in the sequel trilogy, but
I will say I
oops,
recently rewatched Last Jedi,
yeah,
and the casino theme isn't terrible.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
as
haven't
opposed to
really
like
noticed. I'll have to go
Maz's
back and watch
place
it.
isn't as fantastic, right?
I really like that.
Did you? I felt like it was really
Yeah,
just kind of a jumbly mess.
I liked it. I kind of usually dig when JJ writes music for stuff.
Yeah,
Except I think that was JJ and Lin Manuel Miranda that wrote that.
was it? Because I thought it was at least based on some actual piece or something.
Yeah,
It's
I
been a while.
think
I'm only thinking of it from LSG Media's piece on
yeah,
it.
I think JJ went and saw Hamilton
Hmm.
and met him or something, and then like emailed him or something and said, we're basically gonna have our own cantina scene. Do you want to collab or do you want to help or do you want to or something? And they ended up writing it together.
Yeah, that would have been a great place to use your Jedi speed.
That's an excellent point, right? Where was the Jedi speed? Because that's where to be using it in the game right now.
Exactly. Although,
I knew
man,
this was
in like
coming.
Knights of the Old Republic, I use that sprint ability almost constantly.
Yeah.
Playing through the second one, I didn't walk anywhere without having that speed ability turned on.
Yep. Well, now it's automatic.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm referring to like the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And here's the problem. This doesn't happen anymore. But they totally spoiled that.
Those medic droids or whatever. Like those guys are little cuties.
Yeah. Um, they had the music piece. It's titled like the Fall of Qui Gon,
Mhm.
or I think it's Qui Gon's Fall or something like that.
Right.
in the music list, and
Right.
the soundtrack had come out before the movie had come out.
Which is kind of a shame that like
So,
that winds up happening.
yep. And now the soundtracks don't release until the day the movie comes out.
Even then, it feels like it should be like, a week later. Although I guess we don't really wind up with as many like spoiler filled like track listings.
Yeah, they're really careful now. That was like real egregious. You look back, and I want to do this throughout this. Like map her to Leia.
Hmm.
And it's like she's got some martial prowess to her.
Yeah.
She can work her way around a gun. She's incredibly deft at negotiations and diplomacy. She's a great senator, which Leia becomes.
Yeah.
I think they definitely missed a lot of execution with her, but there are some instances of that, like that, where she's just like, you know what, whatever,
See, okay.
get my gun and shoot you all.
So I guess this is a good point where like you'd mentioned
I
like
love that.
Timothy Zahn and like as a result some of the extended universe stuff. And I guess I might as well like get on my fucking soapbox. Man, the at least that first book out of the Thrawn trilogy or whatever, not
Yeah,
that great. Actually, it feels that way for a lot of the expanded universe stuff, where it's just specifically they don't know what the fuck to do with Leia.
yeah,
It's I don't know, like she loses all character growth between episode 6 and extended universe movies or books.
yeah.
It's real not good.
That is something that they've really done a lot with in the new canon.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause it just seems like you've got people who like are a lot better about writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's people who are a lot better at writing. I hate to say writing female
Well, that's what
characters, but I
I
think
was
it's
trying
gotten
to
better.
allude to. It's just like it's
Yeah.
just a thing where like a lot of these dudes, I hate to be that one of those people, but it's like a lot of these dudes are dudes, and it's just
Yeah.
like I really can't find a way to write Leia as a convincingly like competent character, so I just won't.
Right. Oh. Oh, kid.
Oh,
Now what's
those,
interesting is those cockpit glass. That's not real.
yeah,
That's added in later. There's no like glass. Pretty good.
yeah. It's not unconvincing, the glass, especially with like all those
Maybe
little
you
like
shouldn't have left
scratches and
just
stuff.
one ship.
Yeah, that's the
What's
other thing
that?
is we saw like a whole blockade going on previously, and then it's like, okay, no, we'll just pull back to one.
Yeah, they just have a droid control ship, and that's it.
And that's the other thing is, man, it's I understand why, but it seems like a real design flaw to have your entire army controlled by a ship
Yeah.
instead of doing like a decentralized network. Now, granted, that probably just wasn't a thing to think about back then, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Wonder what the point of the red sticky out light is for.
Maybe is like a warning thing.
I
I don't know.
guess. I don't know.
They're all around though.
Shunk, woof, woof,
This
woof.
is kind of graphic for Star
It
Wars.
really is, but I dig it. I mean, to be fair, you don't actually
I
see
know I
anything on
love
the
it. Make no
inside, so
mistake.
like it could be worse. It could be he falls down, like you see the entrails separate out and stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess
Yeah,
that
but
wouldn't happen
it's
with a
cauterized.
since it cauterizes. Be more fun.
When he comes back with his spider legs, it's pretty fucking amazing. Liam Neeson is like, thank God.
Oh man, it's a good thing I only signed a 1 movie contract.
Yeah.
Poor bastard, you're stuck in this for a while. That's one of those things. I guess we're talking about movie contracts, a separate universe, but man, the fact that like DC keeps losing all these actors
Yeah.
is kind of surprising. It's like, did you guys not like work out a multi-movie contract thing? I mean, I understand that they can like buy their way out of them typically, but I don't
It's
know.
not as much, I think, the actors as much as like the directors.
Yeah.
Like they didn't sign Patty Jenkins to a multi film deal, and Wonder Woman did so amazing, and I'm sure they paid 20 times what they would have if they would have signed her to a multi-film deal.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, they could have probably picked her up for cheaper at the time than now.
Yeah, I still love the guards.
Yeah, the guards are pretty
Oh,
dope.
there's a Jedi behind him.
You can definitely see like the evolution to the
Here we go. Ready?
Royal Guard,
Yeah.
or I guess Imperial Guard. There we go.
Wonk wonk. I'm gonna watch your career with great enthusiasm. Can I just say though how happy I am he's gonna be in at least in some capacity in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, it is pretty dope.
I love him so
It's
much.
interesting they brought back the same hair that she had earlier. I didn't track the rest of the outfit. I tracked the hair at least. So I have to wonder if
this
maybe that was
this
a thing with
doesn't
the
look
shooting
great.
schedule. No, it very much
But
doesn't.
they were so happy. I remember seeing an interview where they were like, they worked so hard on that shot because they were able to something I guess George always wanted was to see him walk.
Yeah.
And like they worked really hard to get that shot so that they could, show the the maker his creation walking.
Yeah.
But looking back, it's like, ooh.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up as well.
It's just I'm so glad they've gone back to using the puppet because this looks so bad.
Yeah, well, it's
It
just
just
one of those
doesn't
things
look
that like it's just not going to age well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's movies that have done that did CGI back then that still hold up really well. I mean, everybody will cite like Jurassic Park, but there's also
Yeah.
like a lot of tricks being done to make so you can't notice the problems. This is also another one that's like it's you can actually make out the body really well in
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Like the funeral pyre from 6, I don't remember really like you don't really see anything if I remember right.
I don't know. You see the helmet and everything burning.
Yeah. But at the same time it's like, oh man, you don't see
But it's not
you don't see a person.
It's not like a human body.
Yeah.
I understand the need for exposition, but this is kind of weird that everybody's choosing now to talk about this at the funeral.
Well, and it's what's really kind of weird is that it just feels like you had a really like easy closing point earlier, and then it's like, and now we're gonna continue on for several minutes for exposition.
Now we're gonna wrap the story up.
And it's like, oh man, we could have done this somewhere else.
Yep. You can never really appreciate Ian McDermott's nose until right now. I mean, that thing was meant to poke out from behind a hood.
Yeah.
And here's Lucas saying, I think actually I want to end every movie like I did Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
What, you didn't like the new song for the Ewoks? Well, here you go.
Although to be fair, like the ending song isn't terrible for the celebration here.
For here?
Yeah.
No, actually it's not. I kind of dig it.
Especially that like choir in the background.
How long was his hair that they got that little braid?
I don't know.
And I think that's Warwick and Davis again, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think that's Kanan's master right there. So what is this thing that they have? It's like one of those. It's like they went to Spencer's Gifts.
Yeah, one of those like plasma orbs. So I mean, in
Yeah.
Darth and Droids, it's supposed to be the peace orb or something like that.
Okay.
But Darth and Droids is entirely like just
Well,
poking
it's not
fun.
canon, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's basically like what if we ran these movies as a D&D campaign. Which is it's pretty fantastic actually. I don't know if you've ever read Darth and Droids. I think you said before that
I've
Ned
read some
has.
of it. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah, between that and there's a Lord of the Rings D21 as well. That's really good.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of that too, but I haven't really.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a minute since I've read either of them. But I guess we've hit the end.
Yeah, I was trying to. I'm mentally like racing through the movie, trying to figure out if there was something. These commentaries are harder than I thought it was going to be.
How so?
I watched some other or like official commentaries or something, and I remember always screaming like, "Why didn't you talk about this during this part? Whoa, oh, you missed this bit," and it's like, holy shit, that's really hard because you start talking and
Yeah, it's just a thing where like once you start going in, it's like, okay, well, I had a thought about this, but I'm in the middle of this topic. I'll get back to it, and then something else happens on screen. And
yep,
you're like, oh shit, I got to
yep,
talk about that.
exactly.
I got to talk about Yordle for
Um,
45 minutes. I'm sorry.
that's right. I'm really, bounce around a little bit. I'm really glad that they decided for the Last Jedi to go back to puppet Yoda.
Yeah,
That made me really happy inside.
yeah. It carries an
That was probably
entirely
one of my
different weight
favorite
to it
bits of
and
that
stuff.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. How did you feel overall? Like watching it? I guess now for the 891st time.
You're probably not far off. Here's the thing, and I feel the same way about this movie as I'm gonna through the whole prequel trilogy. Is there were a lot of things that bug me about it, a lot of things that I didn't care for it, but there's a lot of lore in there that's great. And I'm gonna say this a lot over the next couple of films. As many problems as I have with the prequel trilogy, there's a lot of lore there that I really liked.
Right.
I liked seeing the council. I liked seeing Coruscant. I liked seeing the politics
Yeah.
of it.
Well, because it's a
I could have,
semi-functional galaxy, or at least in episode one.
yeah. I like that kind of minutia bit about it. Of well, this is how the galaxy functions, and I don't mind as much the political intrigue.
Hmm.
I think that could have been done a little better.
Sure.
And maybe not been as tedious or anything like
As
that.
as
But
convoluted, like it's really hard for a small child to keep track of what's going on and who's who and what's what.
for sure, and I like the maneuverings of Palpatine behind it all.
Yeah.
Which I don't think again was executed as great when you think about the fact that this dude just or basically has orchestrated a new civil war basically,
Yeah.
or is building up to that. I love Maul. I think it's everybody's complaint that there's not enough Maul.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I kind of think this way about New Hope too, but the first bit of it is kind of slow for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I can honestly do without. I could do without the first bit of Naboo, and I could do without Tatooine.
Yeah. Yeah. You could even open up with them like on escaping the blockade or something as a thing. You could probably open up with that.
Yeah, once well, and a lot of people, felt that way. I'm not as like down on it as a lot of people, but a lot of people are kind of like, this is Star Wars and you're spending all this time on a trade dispute and a trade blockade, like
Yeah.
what? But when you like go back and you look at it in the macro verse of it, right?
Right.
Again, like when you look at the story and the lore, like yeah, it's a trade dispute, like it's completely set up and everything else, and it creates the domino blocks that lead to would it could have you done it differently? Absolutely. you know um and maybe did a little bit more interesting. I see what he was going for, but I think my major issue with this movie is the Anakin storyline.
Right.
I think that's my major issue. He's too young, he's too cute. I mean, bless your heart, Jake
Yeah.
Lloyd. I
Jake
mean,
Lloyd,
you did.
honestly, he doesn't give a bad performance during this. Like, definitely not worthy of
If
the
he does,
hate.
it's not his fault.
Yeah.
Because I don't think his acting's fantastic, but I don't think that's him. I think that's Lucas. But I just think the character and the story of the character, as far as the movies go, not great.
Yeah.
What about you?
So here's the thing is, honestly, episode one is probably one of my least watched uh Star
Sure.
Wars movies. It's one that like if I do a rewatch of the whole series, I usually just skip it.
Okay.
It's I
Fair.
mean, it's a perfectly passable movie, I guess, but it's far from my favorite. It's a movie with
Yeah.
moments that I enjoy. Like I will go back and rewatch like the final lightsaber duel a dozen times,
Oh yeah.
But when it comes down to it, that's basically like I'm watching the whole movie just to hit that point. Um I don't know. It's one that I definitely enjoyed more as a kid than I have grown to currently,
Right.
if that makes some sense.
Remember THX?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I completely agree with you. And when I had them on on DVDs, I actually somehow I lost the episode 1 DVD.
Yeah.
So like if I wanted to do a watch through, like I would have to start with 2, and I was kind of okay with that.
Yeah, and it's just one of the
I
things
mean,
that,
I
like,
definitely have issues with 2 and 3 both, but this one, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just the Anakin storyline. I was not.
it's basically a lot of setup for what we get out of 2 and 3 when it comes down to it,
Yeah,
right? Like, it's like all of this is basically just serving to set up a background world that could have been done in a more, streamlined way.
for sure. Yeah, and I just think like, especially when it's the Clone Wars, right? Because you hear so much about the Clone Wars, or you hear of the Clone Wars in like Episode 4. Like my father fought in the Clone Wars, and it's like, or you fought in the Clone Wars, or something like that, and it's like, oh my god, there was this whole
Yeah,
thing,
when
right?
you don't have the knowledge of what
And
these Clone Wars are gonna be, it's like, "Oh shit, what does that mean? What's that all about?
yeah,
Oh, fuck."
and I almost just feel like I don't know how you could have done it, but I almost feel like you should have started more in the middle of the
Yeah,
story
that's what I was saying earlier was,
and made the Clone Wars the focus of the
yeah, that's what I
trilogy.
was saying
You
earlier
know
was
that.
if you took that and just, like, ran with that and turned it into this other conflict and explored instead the people, within the conflict and how they react to it, I feel like that opened up a lot more, possibilities for storytelling.
Yeah. And you could also go into, how it affects Anakin as a young Padawan. And, if he had Qui-Gon as a master, Qui-Gon dies in a battle or something, or he's betrayed and killed or
Could even have a
something
thing
that
where
makes him,
he dies in battle and, like, Anakin loses himself in a moment of rage and, like, managed to turn the tide in the battle, but it's like the beginning of the fall for him.
yeah. Yeah, I don't, I warned beforehand that, all Star Wars material was, on the table as far as spoilers go, but I think they handled Ezra Bridger's story so much better with that,
Right.
as far as dancing with the dark side, where he tries to save his friends, saves them, but in doing so, like dips his toe a little too far
Right.
and struggles with it for a while. Is very much tempted, because he was incredibly powerful
Yeah.
when he did that. And that's what I think should have been, maybe the focus is, wow, if I give into this, it's the temptation. That's all you hear about in Star Wars, is the temptation of the dark
Well, because
side.
you could do a whole thing where, like, throughout this war, Anakin just keeps seeing people close to him, like, fall, like, just one after another, and
Right.
succumbs to the dark side, not just to save, like, Padme, but to try and, like, end this war and actually save,
Right.
everybody. And it's in trying
Yeah.
it's in this, like, heroic sacrifice that, like, we lose him and lose everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right with that. It could be something where, in a moment of weakness or something, he does something to save people and realizes how powerful and how easy it was.
Yeah.
And, it it haunts him, and he starts doing that and mix that in with losing people. And in the end, I get, I don't know how you work Padme into that, per se.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I understand what Lucas was going for when it came to Padme and his dive into that. Padme is the one that caused him to do that, but it just seemed like such a weak thing. I don't know how you mix Padme in there, except maybe he thinks she dies and she doesn't, or something like that. But
Yeah.
um, I just feel like you could have been more subtle, and you could have made it more of a struggle. It's like, oh, maybe there's three things that bothers me about the trilogy, and that's the second thing is the fall of
'Cause
Skywalker,
it's
the
like,
rise of
you
Vader.
you would have to think, like, what would motivate, um, Anakin to participate and help the Emperor build a planet destroyer? right? Like
Right.
there has to be a motivation there beyond just like, no, I'm totally loyal to the emperor. Whoever was before me will fall
Yeah.
before my hand. Like it becomes way more
Right.
interesting if it's a like a sort of last ditch effort thing, or like you can explore just a lot in why in his motivations to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there could have been some more subtlety as far as like, having him, join the emperor and uh believing he was on the right side. I think maybe that's what I feel is like, him using Padme and finding immortality is like a shortcut. Like there should have been a lot more nuanced mistrust between him and the Jedi, or there should have been some betrayals that fed into that.
Yeah, like and
That kind of thing. It just seemed like it was like 1 minute he's um confiding in Mace Windu, and then like 2 minutes later he's cutting his hand off, which we don't need to get into because it's 2 movies away. But um, I guess in that aspect, I guess that just feeds into the arc
yeah,
of Anakin. I just feel like that could have been done so differently. They should have focused on that differently, and they should have focused on the Clone Wars, differently. I mean, the plus side of this is we got the Clone Wars series,
yeah.
which was amazing, but it would have been nice to see a lot of that, on the screen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it was a really just kind of a missed opportunity. It was a really interesting area that could have been explored and just wasn't. And I mean, ultimately, I just granted that's just not the story that I guess Lucas wanted to tell, even if it was potentially the more interesting one.
Right. Right.
But if we don't have anything else, we should probably wrap it up.
Now we can wrap it up. So that's it for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Next week, we'll be presenting you with our commentary for Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Can I just say real quick, I was going to open up with this, but this round, I am not wild about the, um, what do you call them? The subtitles
Oh
or,
yeah,
we had Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, I do like.
yeah,
Attack of the Clones just seems out of place, and Phantom Menace seems completely out of place. And every time I say that, there's somebody who's like, "But it's supposed to match the old serials," and it's like, yeah, I get that, but the Phantom Menace, what?
yeah,
And Attack of the Clones, it's like the clones aren't attacking, like,
yeah.
it's like I understand the purpose and why, the style of them, but it just,
It's just it's something gets lost once it's actually put down and said
it
aloud.
was. I guess they were kind of silly.
Yeah,
The Empire Strikes Back and, Return of the Jedi, those are great.
right.
A New Hope came later. It wasn't originally called A New Hope. That came around later when they decided that they were, um, in fact, I don't think the original run even said A New Hope in the title cards.
I couldn't be certain because I've heard conflicting shit.
The original run of it, I don't think had that. I'll have to look that up to make sure. But that was great. But it seemed like this round, it was kind of like,
Yeah, yeah.
not that that's a big deal or
Because the other
anything,
ones
but
like they make contextual sense, right? Like if you were to pull it back and just use a subtitle. Okay, so Attack of
yeah,
the um Return of the Empire. But I'm fucking going dumb. I lost all thoughts.
Empire
Empire
Strikes
Strikes
Back.
Back. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I'm running through like 40 different subtitles. Empire Strikes Back um makes sense outside of just like as a sentence, right? Or as a summary of the
right.
movie, right? The Empire is striking back. Dope. Return of the Jedi. Jedi have returned. Dope. Makes sense. Attack of the Clones. Clones are attacking. Well, maybe not as much.
Yeah, yeah. It's just one of those
Phantom
things.
Menace, I guess, makes
That's
some
me kind
sense
of
in
being
that there
nitpicky,
is the
though.
idea of there being a dark force in the background or
Yeah,
unseen, but it's just kind of like, yeah, we could maybe come up with something a little bit better here.
yeah.
What would you call episode one?
Episode
Yeah.
1, um, The Rise of Preschool.
Okay, I would call it Gungan Fury. So,
I like yours better. You you win this round.
um, but yeah, let's go ahead
Cool.
and probably kill it.
Yeah, so thanks for listening. I hope hopefully if you found us, you've already done so, but if not, definitely subscribe uh to this podcast. Of course, you can find us where you found us, Apple Podcasts, um Spotify eventually. So leave a review if you do care so. Tweet us out at it's NOWBS pod. What did you call it? Knobs?
Noobs.
Yeah, on Twitter. Let us know your favorite bits, your least favorite bits of the movie we just watched, and what you might like to see us cover in the future. And yeah, we'll see you next week for episode 2.
Yeah. See you later, noob heads.
Bye.
Bye.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.